9 live read. I did chapter 9 before, but it something happened, so I'm gonna read through it again. But yeah, let's just get right into it. Chapter 9, we're in Mava'u, and stuff is going down with the Finau from Hapai and his guys, and also with the Vava'u people. So, still a Vava'u Hapai thing. Chapter 9. Finau, having at this time no business of importance on which to employ his attention, resolved to go to the island of Hunga, lying at a small distance to the southward of Vava'u, in order to inspect the plantations there and to recreate himself a little with the spot of shooting birds and rats. Mr. Mariner, as usual, formed one of the party. So they're about to go Fakuma and shoot birds too, I guess. On this island, there is a peculiar cavern situated on the western coast, the entrance to which is some feet beneath the surface of the sea, even at low water. All right, so this is for the Vava'u folks who know where this is. I think I've seen this before, as far as it may be open now, if I'm not mistaken. If you know, let me know in the comments. But we're about to go. So there's a big old mound, right? And it forms a cave. And in order to get into it, you have to go down into the water and go in, and then you'll come up inside of this cave. And was first discovered by a young chief while diving after a turtle. The nature of this cavern will be better understood if we imagine a hollow rock rising 60 feet or more above the surface of the water, into the cavity of which there is no known entrance but one, and that is on the side of the rock, several feet under the water, which flows into it, and consequently the base of the cavern may be said to be the sea itself. So if you were to go into this thing, just like I said, the only way into this cave for anybody in Vava'u is to go in, down, up under the water, and then going in and coming up on the thing. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that cave is open at the top now, but back then when Mariner was there, it was a covered place. The depth of the entrance below the surface differs, of course, with the different heights of the tide. When Mariner entered, it was about 6 feet below the surface. Right? Jeremiah Higgins says it was 2 or 3 feet when he went in at nearly low water, at which period it is very difficult to enter on account of the swell. Okay, so now Mariner's saying it's 6 feet, and his friend who told the story said it was about 2 or 3 feet. So it just depends on the tide to get into this cave. Finau and his friends, being on this part of the island, proposed one afternoon on a sudden thought to go into this cavern and drink Cava. So there's another time they go in just to go mix. Mr. Mariner was not with them at the time of the proposal was made, but having to come down a little while after to the shore and seeing some of the young chiefs diving into the water, one after another, and not rise again, he was a little surprised and inquired of the last, who was just preparing to take the same step, what they were about. So I guess Mariner wasn't there. When he got there, Finau and those guys were already in, and then he came to the back of the line and was asking the guy, what are you guys doing? And the guy was basically going to let him know, we're about to go in underwater and get into this cave. And for anybody in Vava'u, let me know if you've seen this. Follow me, he said, and I will take you where you have never been before, and where Finau and his chiefs and Matapules are now assembled. Mr. Mariner, supposing it to be the famous cavern of which he had heard some account, without any further hesitation prepared. So I guess Mariner's heard of this cave. It is proper to mention that in presence of a superior chief, it is considered very disrespectful to be undressed, under which circumstances, as the present, therefore, everyone retires a little, so they break apart, go a little ways away from each other, I think is what he's saying. And as soon as he has divested himself of his usual dress, slips on an apron made of the leaves of the sea tree or of matting called kie. The same respect is shown if it be necessary to undress near a chief's grave because some otua or god may be present. So before they went into the water, everybody goes into their little areas where, bushes, wherever, and they undress, but they're wearing a kie or a sea leaf. I imagine it's an apron, so it's probably not just to cover up. I guess it's for waterproofing. Anyway, the matting on a kie is would probably be a little bit more waterproof and well, not waterproof, but water can get in and out, but still be tied up to look proper. All the light that came into this place. Let's see. Hold on. Where am I? What the heck? Did I just lose my place? Oh, Finau. Keep losing my freaking place. Okay, so Mariner follows him down because he's heard of this place. Himself to follow his companion who dived into the water, and he after him, and guided by the light reflected from his heels, entered the opening in the rock, and having dived through the passage, which is about 8 or 9 feet in length, rose into the cavern. He was no sooner above the surface of the water than, sure enough, he heard the voices of the king and his friends. So those guys are already in there when he goes into this cave. Being directed by his guide, he climbed upon a jutting portion of the rock and sat down. All the light that came into this place was reflected from the bottom and was sufficient after remaining about 5 minutes to show objects with some little distinctness. So it's dark in here. So like I said, if I'm not mistaken, that cave in or whoever knows, the top is gone, right? Because I've seen something like that. Back then, when the top was there, they had to go underwater to get there. And the only light that got into that area was the light that came in from the water into the cave. And so that's the only light. So you get into the cave and you look around, and the reflection of the water, of the light through the water, is the only thing that they can see. So it's probably not lit. Some little distinctness. At least he could discover being directed by the voice Finau and the rest of the company seated like himself. So they're about to drink Cava. Remember, Mariner said that they fight Cava so much, or they drink Cava so much, that he just stopped keeping track of how much they drink because they just drank all the time. Where nowadays, we've heard, or I heard a lot before I found out about how much they used to drink Cava back then, was it's only used for ceremonial purposes. But come to find out, because they said, the Tongans are abusing it, the Fakuma culture and everything, they whatever about the Fakuma. And then come to find out in Mariner's time, no, they were drinking Cava all the time because they were just as social. They hung out, they met, when they went to build canoes, they drank Cava. When they went to cut down trees, they drank Cava after. When they took the Port-au-Prince, when Mariner got marched into Hot Bai, he went into a hut while they were drinking Cava there. This is after they slaughtered the people on the Port-au-Prince. So they're going into this cave just to drink some more Cava. Nevertheless, as it was desirable to have a stronger illumination, Mr. Mariner dived out again and, procuring his pistol, primed it well, tied plenty of ngatu tight round it, and wrapped the whole up in a plantain leaf. So he went to go get sticks. I guess he's going to bring light into the cave. Mariner dives back out of the cave, goes and gets sticks and gets whatever he needs to come in. He's going to bring light or light a torch inside of the cave. He directed an attempt to bring a torch in the same way. Thus prepared, he re-entered the cavern as speedily as possible, unwrapped the ngatu, a great portion of which was perfectly dry, fired it by the flash of the powder, and lighted the torch. There you go. The place was now illuminated tolerably well, for the first time perhaps since its existence. It appeared to be about 40 feet wide and the main part, but which branched off on one side in two narrow portions. So now, Mariner, for the first time probably, this whole entire cave is lit, and now he's looking and taking measurements. Like this is a pretty tall cave. It looks like it's 40 feet tall. And that picture of the cave that I'm talking about, that in Tonga, that may be where the top is gone. Yeah, it looked like a pretty tall cave. The medium height seemed also about 40 feet. Jeremiah Higgins thinks it was not near so high. He had the light of the sun setting opposed to the entrance and refracted through the water. Mr. Mariner had a superior light from his torch. So obviously, if you're only going to use the light that's coming out of the water, you're not going to be able to tell as well. But yeah, Mariner has a torch, so he's going to be able to see it, make a better judgment on measurement. The roof was hung with stalactites in a very curious way, resembling, upon a cursory view, the Gothic arches and ornaments of an old church. So stalactites. Stalactites are the buildup of water and dirt, those pointy things that come inside of caves. Those are stalactites. And the stalagmites are the other ones that come up. So this is just old science that I remember from back in my high school days. I remember stalactites and stalagmites and all that. After having examined the place, they drank Cava and passed away the time in conversation upon different subjects, which is what we do in Cava right now, all the time. Conversation. Among other things, an old Matapul, after having mentioned how the cavern was discovered by a young chief in the act of diving after a turtle, related an interesting account of the use which this chief made of his accidental discovery. The circumstances are as follows. So they're sitting around, they're drinking Cava, and now this Matapul is about to tell this story, right? He's about to tell a story of how the cave was discovered. I think if we look at the cave, so if we look up let me see if we can find the cave in Hunga Vava'u. Find the cave. Hunga. See if there's a picture of, oh yeah, right there. Hunga, oh no, that's Hunga Haven. See if there's a picture of any cavern or anything. Let's see. Hunga Cave. Let's see. All right. I don't know if there's a, oh, they don't have any, okay. Cave in Hunga. And if anybody from Hawaii has better pictures, I could have swore I saw people jumping into that or swimming inside at some point in time. Let's see. Nope, I can't find anything in here. Anyways, all right. Let me know if you guys can find a picture of that cave in Hunga. Burn yourself. I gotta stop losing my place. After having examined the place, they drank Cava and passed away the time in conversation. Among other things, an old Matapul is telling the story about how it was discovered. So they're fight Cavaing, and this old Matapul is about to tell a story. In former times, there lived a Tui, a Vava'u, who exercised a very tyrannical deportment towards his people. At length, when it was no longer to be borne, a certain chief meditated a plan of insurrection and was resolved to free his countrymen from such an odious slavery or to be sacrificed himself in the attempt. So this is just like Finau and Tuponiua when they went and took out Tukuaho, because Tuponiua felt Tukuaho is in Tongatapu, and even though we give tribute to the king because he's the king of Tonga, it seems like he's being very tyrannical. Tukuaho is the guy who cut 9 of his men, the cook, 9 of their left arms, cut their left arms off. And Merida said they cut it down around here just to mark him as his. That's the type of person that Tukuaho was. And besides, Tuponiua was the chief of Vava'u. Finau Ulukalala is the chief of Ha'apai. And Tuponiua said, you know what? This guy's tyrannical. Let's go take him out. In the earlier chapters is when Finau and Tuponiua will take him out. So this Matapul is telling an old story of the same type of situation where there was a chief who felt like the Tui in Vava'u was tyrannical and being a bad leader, and he wanted to take that the Tui Vava'u out, that leader out, because he couldn't stand it anymore. He felt enslaved, and he was willing to sacrifice himself and free his people, right? And that happens a lot, or that happened a lot in the history in Tonga, as far as it seems like the good leaders were the ones that lived longer. It seems like if there was a tyrannical leader there, just like Tukuaho, he was taken out. And it looks like right here, this chief is about to take the Tui Vava'u out because he was being the same way. Being, however, treacherously deceived by one of his own party, the tyrant became acquainted with his plan and immediately had him arrested. So one of his own friends who he planned with, one of the chiefs he planned with, told the Tui Vava'u, and the Tui Vava'u arrested him, took him. He was condemned to be taken out to sea and drowned, and all his family and relations were ordered to be massacred that none of his race might remain, right? Remember we talked about the culture of how he was describing that when you kill somebody, you kill the entire family so that nobody can come back and, for revenge. So the Tui Vava'u took this chief whose plan was to take the Tui Vava'u out and his whole family, and it says his relations, so probably his wives and their children, and take them out and drown them. So this Tui Vava'u sounds like a bad guy. One of his daughters, a beautiful girl, young and interesting, had been reserved to be the wife of a chief of considerable rank, and she also would have sunk, the victim of the merciless destroyer, had it not been for the generous extortions of another young chief who a short time before had discovered the cavern of Hunga. All right. So we have this chief who planned an insurrection on the Tui Vava'u, and he has a beautiful daughter that's engaged to another high chief. But the Tui Vava'u said, nope, his beautiful daughter, all the family, they've all got to die. So we've got to take them all out and drown them. And one of a young chief of lower rank was in love with this girl that's about to go die because his father is the one that put the plan together to kill the Tui Vava'u. This discovery had kept within his breast a profound secret, reserving it as a place of retreat for himself in case he should be unsuccessful in a plan of revolt, which he also had in view. So this young chief loves this girl, but he also knows that there's a cave that nobody's discovered yet, because he discovered it chasing a turtle, right? Back in Tonga. And I've seen them kill turtles. It's crazy. But he's chasing this turtle, and the turtle goes into this cave, comes up, and nobody knows where the cave is, but this young chief found it there. And now that the girl that he's in love with, who's engaged to that high chief, she's supposed to die because her dad is supposed to be put to death for conspiracy. He had long been enamored of this beautiful young maiden, but had never dared to make her acquainted with the soft emotions of his heart, knowing that she was betrothed to a chief of a higher rank. and greater power. There you go. This is a love story already. He is this low-ranking chief is in love with this girl. Probably grew up with her, but she is engaged to a higher chief. The higher chief isn't stepping in to save her because a Tuivava'u wants to kill her dad and the whole family because her dad tried to take him out. And so he's confessing, yeah, he loved this girl, right? But now the dreadful moment arrived when she was about to be cruelly sacrificed to the rancor of a man to whom he was a most deadly enemy. No time was to be lost. He flew to her abode, communicated in a few short words the decree of the tyrant, declared himself her deliverer if she would trust his honor, and with eyes speaking the most tender affections, he waited with breathless expectation for an answer. All right, this is why John Martin's a great writer because he's writing the scene. He's writing the scene itself. He says, "Hey, like I could hear it in Tonga. It's like, "Etamate, go ahead, tuivava'u. You and your dad, your family, everybody." But looking into her eyes, but I've loved you since we were, little growing up. And let me save you or let me come to your rescue. Maria Dhamma. So Vava'u guy right here, huh? Soon her consenting hand was clasped in his. Oh, she grabs his hand. Nice. The shades of evening favored their escape, so it's getting dark. While the wood, the covert, or the grove afforded her concealment, till her lover had brought a small canoe to a lonely part of the beach. In this, they speedily embarked, and as he paddled her across the smooth wave, he related the discovery of the cavern, destined to be her asylum till an opportunity offered of conveying her to the Fiji Islands. So he takes this young girl that he loves, even though she was engaged to the higher chief, but because she was going to die, he takes her and he goes to the cave to hide her inside of the cave that he found chasing a turtle. She, who had entrusted her personal safety entirely to his care, hesitated not to consent to whatever plan he might think promoted of their ultimate escape. Her heart, being full of gratitude, love, and confidence, found an easy access. So she wasn't sure, but she trusted him. And now she's appreciating him for saving her life. They soon arrived at the rock. He leaped into the water, and she instructed him, followed close after. They rose into the cave and rested from their fears and their fatigue, partaking of some refreshment which he had brought there for himself, little thinking at the time of the happiness that was in store for him. So there's food and drinks in there already that he took in there earlier. Early in the morning, he returned to Vava'u to avoid suspicion, but did not fail in the course of the day to repair again to the place which held all that was dear to him. He brought her mats to lie on, the finest ngatu for a change of dress, the best of food for her support, sandalwood oil, coconuts, and everything he could think of to render her life as comfortable as possible. So he saved her from dying by taking her to this cave, and now he's basically building a little home there. Remember when these guys went in there, Mariner said that the only light that came in there was a light that you can see from the water. So I imagine if he was as bright, he would have took stuff in there to put torches around so they could light this whole thing, which was 40 feet, and it was 40 feet wide or whatever, and it was a big old cave that they're in now. He gave her as much of his company as prudence would allow, and at the most appropriate times, lest the prying eye of curiosity should find his retreat. So he's doing this secretly so that nobody knows what he's doing, where he's going every time he leaves, right? Just to go to her. He pleaded his tale of love with the most impassioned eloquence, more than sufficient to win her warmest affections. for she owed her life to his prompt and generous exertions at the risk of his own. And how much was he delighted when he heard the confession from her own lips that she had long regarded him with a favorable eye, but a sense of duty had caused her to smother the growing fondness till the late sad misfortune of her family and the circumstances attending her escape had revived all her latent affections to bestow them wholly upon a man to whom they were so justly due. Oh my gosh, John Martin is so poetic. He brings her to the cave, they're sitting there, whatever, and then she finally confesses to him that, you know what? I liked you too. I liked you since you were little too. Because he already confessed, you know what? Save her life, be together. And she finally, he says, she finally said it back to him. It was like, see, I know I was engaged to a higher ranking chief than you, but when we were still little, I was already in love with you. Nice. This is a great love story already. How happy were they in this solitary retreat? Tyrannic power now no longer reached them, shut out from the world and all its care and perplexities, secure from all the eventful changes attending upon greatness, cruelty, and ambition. Themselves were the only powers they served, and they were infinitely delighted with the simple form of government. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I could definitely see myself in that position, or I could definitely feel what they're feeling. That's where they felt free. Was inside of that cave, just me and you. Whatever we want, it's just me and you. Huh? No more no more other chiefs. It's just me and you and our love. Very romantic. But although this asylum was their great security in their happiest moments, they could not always enjoy each other's company. It was equally necessary to their safety that he should be often absent from her and frequently for a length of time together, lest his conduct should be watched. So, yeah, of course. I can come out here whenever I can, but that's crazy because you leave a girl in a cave and you got to go back, to a vault so nobody gets suspicious. But yeah, she can't come out or she's going to die. So she has to wait there. And he does the traveling back and forth. The young chief, therefore, panted for an opportunity to convey her to happier scenes where his ardent imagination pictured to him the means of procuring for her every enjoyment and comfort. Nor was it long before an opportunity offering he derived the means of restoring her with safety to the cheerful light of day. So, yeah, he goes back home, but he's hoping that and planning for a day to go and take her somewhere else where they can be together. He signified to his inferior chiefs and Matapul, so there's inferior chiefs and Matapul is that he has, that it was his intention to go to the Fiji Islands and bewished them to accompany him with their wives and female attendants. Okay, so he's a chief, but he's not that high because he wasn't, she didn't belong to him, but he was a chief. So he tells his lower chiefs and Matapul, hey, let's go to Fiji. I want to go to Fiji. Let's go. And typically, when they travel, like chiefs, if they want to take the lower chiefs or whoever their Matapule was, they'd all travel together. So that was one of these plans. But he desired them on no account to mention to the latter the place of their destination, lest they should inadvertently betray their intention and the governing chief prevent their departure. So he's saying, so he didn't tell them where they were going. Because he didn't want anybody to betray him and end up telling, the story. A large canoe was soon got ready and every necessary preparation made for the voyage. As they were on the point of departure, they asked him if he would not take a Tonga wife with him. So he doesn't have a Tonga wife. I don't know if he had any other wife, but he says he doesn't have a Tonga wife. He replied, no, but he should probably find one by the way. So he's saying, nah, not right now. Let's just go, and then I'll just look for one. Piki Hawaii found the way over there, I guess. This they thought a joke, but in obedience to his orders, they said no more, and everybody being on board, they put to sea. As they approached the shores of Hunga, he directed them to steer to a certain point, and having come close to a rock, according to his orders, he got up and desired them to wait there while he went into the sea to fetch his wife. This is how a lot of stories start, right? Or old legends, right? It starts like this because they don't know that the cave is there. They don't know that there's a girl in the cave, and they're probably wondering what the heck. What, you're gonna dive into the ocean to get a wife? That's crazy. Without staying to be asked any questions, he sprung into the water from that side of the canoe furthest from the rock, swam under the canoe, and proceeded forward into the sanctuary, which had so well concealed his greatest and dearest treasure. So the canoe gets to the side of the rock, and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna go get my wife." He jumps into the ocean side and swims under the canoe and goes into the cave. Everybody on board was exceedingly surprised at his strange conduct and began to think him insane, right? Which is understandable. After a little lapse of time, not seeing him come up, they were greatly alarmed for his safety, imagining a shark must have seized him. While they were all in the utmost concern, debating what was best to be done, whether they ought to dive down after him or wait according to his orders, for that perhaps he had only swum round and was come up in some niche of the rock, intending to surprise them. So they think he's joking, or they think he's dead. They're standing there. All they know is that their chief jumped into the ocean to go get a wife, right? And now they're like, "Oh, David, where's this guy? He's either gotten eaten by the sharks or he's drowned." But then they're thinking, "Oh, well, maybe he's just trying to surprise us by jumping out of some other area." Their wonder was increased beyond all powers of expression on seeing him rise to the surface of the water and come into the canoe with a beautiful female. Dude, this sounds like a story that you could, a legend of a man who jumped into the ocean and brought up a beautiful wife, beautiful woman, right? You can see how they're surprised. They're like, "What the hell? Where'd she come from?" At first, they mistook her for a goddess, and their astonishment was not lessened when they recognized her countenance and found her to be a person whom they had no doubt was killed in the general massacre of her family. So they all knew that her family was massacred. So first he pops up and like, "Oh snap!" She pops up like, "Oh, what the heck?" And then eventually when she got on board and got in the canoe, then they're like, "Oh," they recognize her and they're like, "Oh, she's not dead. We thought Dui Vava'u killed her entire family." This they thought must be her apparition, right? A double or a duplicate. But how agreeable was this wonder softened down into the most interesting feeling when the young chief related to them the discovery of the cavern and the whole circumstances of her escape. So he sat there and told them the entire story, of both of the cave and of hers. They arrived safe at one of the Fiji islands and resided with a certain chief during 2 years, at the end of which time, hearing the death of the tyrant of Vava'u, the young chief returned with his wife to the last mentioned island and lived long in peace and happiness. So this is the story this Matapul is in the cave telling, while the torches are lit inside of this cave in Hunga. This is the story that the Matapul tells them while they're fighting Cava. And storytelling is common. And I can imagine, you can imagine being there while this Matapul was telling the story. of the cave. So he basically they went and stayed in Fiji for a couple of years, and after the Tangaloa tyrant died, then they came back and to Hunga to live happily ever after. Great romance story, right on. Such as to matter of fact is the substance of the account given by the old Matapul. So he's basically saying this is what happened, right? We all believe those kind of stories when they're told, especially when you're in a Cava in the cave, right? You get in the cave and the Matapul starts speaking like, you know, this cave was discovered. They discovered a chief of old. He discovered this cave. He was chasing a turtle. And he found this cave and starts telling the story and goes off. Yeah, you gotta love those type of stories in the Fakuma. There was one thing, however, stated, which might appear in opposition to probability, that the chief's daughter remained in the cavern 2 or 3 months before her lover found an opportunity of taking her to the Fiji Islands. So this is they're fact checking the Matapul. Either that or Mariner's fact checking them right now. It's like, well, how do you stay in here for 2 or 3 months, right? If this be true, there must have been some other concealed opening in the cavern to have afforded a fresh supply of air. With the view to ascertain this, Mr. Mariner swam with the torch in his hand up both the avenues before spoken of, but without discovering any opening. So Mariner is fact-checking this Matapul right now by swimming around looking for an opening where how can she live here with 2 or 3 months with no air, right? He also climbed every accessible place with little success. At the time Jeremiah Higgins was in the cavern, it was nearly low water. He felt a draught of air coming from the left, and on examining the source of it, found a hole which he thinks was more than a foot diameter, from which proceeded a tolerably strong and steady breeze, but not the least glimmer of light. So there you go. So Mariner was there at high tide. He said the hole was 6 feet down, right? Jeremiah Higgins was there at low tide, and he said it was 2 or 3 feet down, the hole under the water. And he said that when the water is that low, then there's a hole that you can see where air can come through, right? Plus, as I said before, as far as if they can breathe in there right now, then there's obviously a way for air to get in there, right? And if you know how the water moves and looks like when you're anywhere near the ocean, when it comes in, so now we have a cavern. When the water comes in, it's like a lung, right? It'll bring air, and when it goes out, it'll take air out, and it'll like it's breathing like a lung is, right? That's what I would imagine is happening when the flow of water go in and out, which is why they can all breathe right now, and they have torches lit. If there wasn't any air or any access to air, then I imagine they probably would have burned up all the oxygen by now. They're Fakava, for crying out loud. So anyway, Mariner's trying to fact check this Matapul. This opening, he guesses to have been, at that time, about 4 feet above the surface of the water. When Mr. Mariner was there, it must have been nearly high water, and the hole probably covered. There you go. And even if it were not concealed, it would transmit no current of air inwardly unless the tide were going out, which he thinks was not the case. So Mariner doesn't believe this story. Like, he couldn't just leave it alone. Like, Shana, just enjoy the romantic story. At the time Higgins was there, the weather was perfectly calm, not a breath of wind stirring. Consequently, the influx of air must have been occasioned by the descent of the surface of the water within. There you go. The water moves in and out with air. Okay. Holy Mariner, he's getting a lesson on science at this point. On the other hand, when the water rises, the air must rush out. There you go. This cavern, therefore, may be said to respire like an animal, the rise and fall of the tide acting as a diaphragm. and the above mentioned narrow passage as a breathing hole. See? Don't let outside ni sigaw tama. Jeremiah Higgins also heard the story of the young chief and his mistress, so Jeremiah Higgins heard it, which perfectly accorded in all the material points with what is told above. It appears from his narration, as well as from Mr. Mariner's, that the natives give this account of the two lovers as a piece of true history, not a romance. So it's not just a story, it's actual history according to the Va'u people. There's a sort of shelf at the further end of the cavern and high up, which is pointed out as having been used for a bed place. Finau and his party, having finished their cava, dived out of the cavern and resumed their proper dress. So after they mix, they leave. After which, they proceeded across the country and got into the public roads to amuse themselves with the sport of shooting rats. These animals are not so large as in our parts of the world, but rather between the size of a mouse and a rat, and much of the same color. They live chiefly upon some vegetables, substances as sugarcane, breadfruit, etc. So they had rats in Tonga, huh? In Vava'u, anyway. They constitute an article of food with the lower orders of people, but who are not allowed to make a sport of shooting them. This privilege being reserved for chiefs and Matapules and Mu'as. So the lower orders can eat them, right? But they can't be a part of the sport. They can't shoot them for some reason, right? And just the rankings, you got the tu'is, the akis, the Matapules, and the Mu'as, right? Those are the only ones that can hunt. Fanakuma. Below them, the tu'as and the kaifonuas apparently aren't allowed to. The plan of regulations of the game of Fanakuma are as follows. So he's about to describe this game called Fanakuma. After they go to Hunga in the cave, the Faikava tell that story. They come out, they go back to Vava'u, and now they're going to Fanakuma. And he's about to tell the story of how they Fanakuma, what it is. A party of chiefs and others having resolved to go rat shooting, their attendants are ordered to roast some coconut, which being done, and the chiefs having informed them what road they mean to take, these attendants proceed along the appointed road, chewing the roasted nut very finely as they go, and spit their mouths with considerable force. So anybody who's done that, chewed coconut. So they have a group of those guys chewing coconuts, walking down the road, and they're blowing it over the side of the road, right, on either side. In doing this, great care is taken not to scatter the particles far from each other, for if they were widely distributed, the rat would not be tempted to stop and pick them up. And if the pieces were too large, he would run away with one piece instead of stopping to eat his fill. The bait is thus distributed at moderate distances on each side of the road, and the men proceed till they arrive at the place appointed for them to stop at. So these guys obviously are the lower guys in society. They chew the coconut and they're blowing it, right? And there's a certain distance that they go to draw the rats out of the bushes to come and eat while they shoot them. If in their way they come to any crossroads, they stick a reed in the ground in the middle of such crossroads as a tapu, or mark of prohibition, for anyone to come that way and distribute the rats or disturb the rats while the chiefs are shooting. What the heck? So they mark off a piece of road and they put a bamboo in the middle of the crossroad in case somebody's walking over there so that they don't come and disturb or chase the rats away. And this no one will do. Really. Tapu. That's the difference between sacred and tapu, as far as tapu to this people is. If it's tapu, it's tapu. You're tapu to touch it or go near it. Even were a considerable chief to approach, on seeing the tapu, he will stop at a distance and sit down on the ground out of respect or politeness to his fellow chiefs. Oh, nice. And wait patiently till the shooting party has gone by. That's such a true statement, huh? As far as how they treat each other, the older folks, they just will not interrupt a vibe of good relationship for nothing. So even if a high chief, he says, comes by and these other chiefs are playing Fanakuma, he'll stop and he'll sit down and wait till they're done playing. A petty chief or one of the lower orders would not dare to infringe upon this tapu at the risk of his life. There you go. That's why tapus are scary, because if you break the tapu, they're gonna tamatei you. What's up?
This is not the title office, is it?
Nope, it's downtown.
Yeah.
Or yeah, up that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Ken, thank you.
Yep. Let me lock this monsters. No more interruptions. Don't be yes. Let's get through this freaking Fanakuma stuff. All right, the distributors of the bait being arrived at the place appointed for them to stop at, sit down to prepare Cava. There you go, more Cava. Bruh, they just got done drinking Cava in the cave, and now they're about to drink Cava again while they're Fanakuma. Having previously given the orders of their chiefs to the owners of the neighboring plantations to send a supply of refreshments such as pork, yams, fowls, and ripe plantains. So the guys who blew the coconuts, they go for a distance or however long, then they sit down and drink Cava, and now the chiefs are about to Fanakuma. The company of chiefs, having divided themselves into two parties, set out about 10 minutes after the puhi. So those guys are called the puhis, right? The puhi, the guy that chewed the coconut and blew out. And follow each other closely in a row along the middle of the road, armed with bows and arrows. It must be noticed, however, that the two parties are mixed. The greatest chief in general proceeding first, behind him one of the opposite party, then one of the same party, then one of the first, and behind him again one of the other party, and so on alternately. So there's two teams. Marina's leader of one of them, and Finau's probably the leader of the other, right? And the two teams will get together and they will walk like this. This is Mariner's team, or Finau's team right here, Mariner's team, and they will walk like this up the road, right? Alternating teams all the way back to the back of the line. The Puhi guys are sitting in there at the end of the road mixing. It must be noticed, however, that the two parties are mixed, the greatest chief, so it goes that. The rules of the game are these. No one may shoot a rat that is in advance of him, except he who happens to be first in the row, for the situations change as will directly be seen. But anyone may shoot a rat that is either abreast of him or behind him. Okay, so you got a line of guys, different teams, all the way back, alternating teams, right? And you cannot shoot a rat that is ahead of you, right? He said you can shoot a rat that is right on either side of you, eating the coconut, or behind you, but you can't shoot any of the ones in front of you. Okay, interesting game. Let's go. As soon as a man has shot, whether he hits the rat or not, he changes his situation with the man behind him, so that it may happen that the last man, if he have not shot so often as the others, may come to be first, and vice versa, the first come to be last, and for the same reason, two or three or more of the same party may come to be immediately behind one another. So he's saying, okay. So he's saying, all right, let's set up Finau first and Mariner, then we'll switch, alternating teams all over, and we'll walk, right? And the first guy can shoot. The first one can shoot either side or anything forward as long as they're walking, right? Now, even if when Finau shoots, as soon as he shoots, even if he hits or doesn't hit, doesn't matter. As soon as he shoots, he goes to the back of the line, right? And then they're still walking. As soon as the front guy shoots, he has to go back to the line. And that's how they're playing this, okay? Okay, interesting. Whichever party kills 10 rats first wins the game. If there be plenty of rats, they generally play 3 or 4 times. As soon as they arrive at any crossroads, they pull up the reeds placed as a tapu that passengers coming afterwards may not be interrupted in their progress. So the bamboo that they put in the middle of the roads to tapu it, so I guess that's a common thing. Because anywhere they that was tapued, they put a bamboo there or a reed there, right? When they marked the food, when they mark things, they mark it with a reed. And when anything's marked with a reed, apparently that's tapu. So anyways, after they get to the end of the hunting grounds, mark the hunting grounds, after they get to mark the hunting grounds, they pick up the tapu stick and then everybody can walk and cross. This is freaking hilarious. When they have arrived at the place where the puhi are waiting, they sit down and partake of what is prepared for them. Afterwards, if they are disposed to pursue their diversion, they send the puhi on to prepare another portion of the road. Okay. So after the party is done playing, get to the place where they mark the hunting ground, the puhi guys are faikavaing and eating. The puhi guys get back up, they start puhiing again. And then now the hunters sit down and now they eat and faikava. The length of road prepared at the time is generally about a quarter of a mile. If during the game anyone of either party see a fair shot at a bird, he may take aim at it. If he kill it, it counts the same as a rat. But whether he hit it or not, if he venture a shot, he changes places with the one behind him. So I guess birds are in it too. If you can hit a bird, you score. Your point. Every now and then, they stop and make a peculiar noise with their lips, like the squeaking of a rat. So probably... right? Which frequently brings them out of the bushes, and they sit upright on their haunches as if in the attitude of listening. If a rat is alarmed by their approach and is running away, one or more cry out, "Stop," with a sudden percussion of the tongue. Sudden percussion of a tongue? How do you make a rat stop with, it's probably, I can't make that sound. I know guys that can make that sound hella loud. That make them stop. A term used, we may suppose, on account of the sharp and sudden tone with which it may be pronounced. Okay. This has generally the effect of making the rat stop when he sits up and appears to much frightened to attempt his escape. When he is in the act of running, the squeaking noise with the lips, instead of stopping him, would cause him to run faster. They frequently also use another sound similar to that we use when we wish to answer the affirmative without opening the lips, consisting of a snort, of a sort of humming noise, sounding through the nostrils, but more loud, short and sudden. What the heck? Like, I don't know. I can't imagine what that sound could be. Anyways, So they're getting the rats to come out, shooting them. If they run away, they have a sound they do with their mouth, a loud sound that makes them stop, and they're shooting them. So this game's interesting. The arrows used on these occasions are nearly 6 feet long, the war arrows being about 3 feet, made of reed, headed with ironwood. They are not feathered, and their great length is requisite that they may go straight enough to hit a small object, besides which it is advantageous in taking an aim through a thick bush. So basically they got these long old freaking arrows to shoot rats with because it'll go straight, right? 6 feet, 6 feet. I'm a little over 6 feet, but it's 6 feet long and they're shooting these things and they get them make them this long so that it can go through bushes and go fast and go straight. Besides which, each individual in the party has only 2 arrows. For as soon as he has discharged one from his bow, it is immediately brought to him by one of the attendants who follow the party. Okay, so there's 3 groups. The group ahead who puhi the coconut, the group of hunters made up of the chiefs, tuis, matapures, and the muas, and then there's a group behind them to pick up the arrows for the group that's hunting. The bows are also are longer than those used in war, being about 6 feet. The war bows being about 4 feet and a half. Nor are they so strong, lest the difficulty of bending them should occasion a slight trembling of the hand, which would render the aim less certain. So they're big, long bows and arrows. Finau and his friends, having finished their shooting excursion and taken some refreshment, directed their walk at random across the island and arrived near a rock, noted by the natives as being, in their estimation, the immediate cause of the origin of all the Tonga Islands. That place is in Vava'u. Okay, what's up? The tradition runs thus. It happened once before the islands were in existence that one of their gods, Tangaloa, went out fishing with a line and hook. It changed, however, that the hook got fixed on a rock at the bottom of the sea. And in consequence of the god pulling in his line, he drew up all the Tonga Islands, which they say would have formed one great land. But the line accidentally breaking, the act was incomplete, and matters were left as they are now. So this is the Tangaloa story, y'all. They're saying that right here at this spot, wherever they are in Vava'u, there's a piece of rock right there, formed out of the island. There's a little hole in it, and they're saying that hole right there, Tangaloa, when he went fishing, he went to go fish to catch some fish, and the fish caught on that hole right there, and he pulled up all of Tonga, and he said the entire landmass came up above the water, right? But for some reason, the line broke, and the whole landmass fell back down into the water, and all that was left was all the heads, the tops of this landmass, or the top of these mountains, and that's why the islands look the way they are. Tonga was left the way they are, right? That's the story. There's the story of Tangaloa being told to Mariner at this point. They show a hole in the rock about 2 feet diameter, which quite perforates it, and in which Tangaloa's hook got fixed. It is moreover said that Tangaloa had, till within a few years, this very hook in his possession, which had been handed down to him by his forefathers, but unfortunately, his house catching fire, the basket in which the hook was kept got burnt with its contents. Okay, so whoever this Tangaloa guy was, right? This old god back in the days, and I think everybody has the same god, right? Because I've heard Tangaloa in New Zealand, I've heard Tangaloa on different islands, and this is their version. They're telling Mariner that, and Tangaloa had this hook all the way up until, a few years when his house burnt down, the hook burnt up with it. Mr. Mariner once asked Tuitonga what sort of hook it was, and was told that it was made of tortoise shell, strengthened by a piece of the bone of a whale. In size and shape, it was just like a large albacore hook, measuring 6 or 7 inches long from the curve to the part where the line was attached, and an inch and a half between the barb and the stem. So where the hook is, it's 7 inches long. Now, I've seen a lot, and now I get and understand what the the significance of the hook. Um, but some say that in some legends that Maui is the one with the hook. Mariner is being told, and this is 1805 by the Matapures, and the Matapures must have been because they didn't know, he didn't. All he could measure was how they looked. These guys are 60, they're 80, they're 50. All he could tell was that these guys are telling. So those guys were born in the mid to the early 1700s. But I do understand the significance of the hook, right? In Moana, Maui had the hook, and I guess in some story, maybe in Hawaii, it was Maui that pulled it up. But here in Tonga, Tangaloa was the one with the hook. But now I understand the importance or the significance of a hook on a lot of the necklaces. I used to have a hook, didn't even know what it was. Just it was Polynesian, it was cool. But now I know the hook does have a significant meaning in Polynesia. Mr. Mariner objected that such a hook must have been too weak for the purpose. Oh no, said the Tuitonga, you must recollect that it was a god's hook and could not break. Right? So Mariner say, oh, God, that couldn't have been a strong hook. It probably wasn't the right hook for the job. And Matapul say, Kai, ko hook me otua. It's from the gods. How come then the line to break? Was it not also the property of God? Mariner's fact checking these guys all the time. What the heck's going on? I do not know how that was, replied Tuitonga, but such is the account they give, and I know nothing further about it. So basically, Mariner's trying to fact check. It was like, well, if it was the hook of God, then how'd the line break? Wasn't it a line of God too? And Tuitonga says, oh, I don't know. I mean, that's just what the stories were told, and that's the ones we believe, which is, how a lot of the history is told and believed today. The legends and whatnot. A few days after this excursion, Finau, having portioned out several of the smaller islands to the government of certain of his chiefs and Matapures, returned to his party to Vava'u. So Finau went out to the different parts of the islands outside of Vava'u, just around there, but all Vava'u islands, and started giving property away to his Matapures. As soon as he arrived at Feletoa, he issued orders for a general assembly of the people to be present on an appointed day at a general fono, or harangue, to be addressed to them in regard to affairs of agriculture, and to remind them of their duty towards their chiefs and how they ought to behave at all public ceremonies. In short, upon such subjects as were more or less connected with agriculture or with moral and political duty. These phonos are frequently held, and often upon subjects of minor importance, such for instance as the expediency of repairing Finau's canoes. So Finau is saying, okay, let's have a phono. Let's all have a meeting. I'm going to set it for a Thursday. Just like to remind everybody, remember, how we're supposed to behave in public. It's a phono. Everybody be respectful. Everybody be, probably well-dressed and whatnot. So he's preparing them for a great meeting in Vava'u. On such an occasion, the owner of a certain plantation would be appointed to provide the carpenters with provisions, another to provide them with canoe timber, a third with a peculiar kind of wood for wedges. Sometimes on more extensive matters, as constructing a large house, planting of yams or bananas, supplying provisions for feasts, burials, and in all these matters a tax is laid upon the people, every principal owner of land providing his share. So what he's saying is that the division, so Finau is going to talk to them about dividing about property, growing stuff, working the lands, whatnot. So these funnels are made for these type of meetings. We're going to meet for building a canoe. We're going to meet for growing crops. We're going to meet for splitting up property. So this is one of those types of funnels. And he's about to explain to everybody what the division is. So I guess he wants to talk to everybody. So everybody's going to be there. The funnel now about to be held was of a general nature, to be addressed to all the people, or at least to the petty chiefs. But the petty chiefs themselves often addressed funnels to their own dependents when they want anything done. It must be observed that in all these funnels, whether general or partial, the labor and care of careful care fall entirely upon the lower orders of the people. For although in the general funnel the petty chiefs take the care ostensibly to themselves, yet afterwards by a minor funnel each confers it on his dependents. So basically he's saying on these big funnels, the main guy, Finau Ulukalala, he's going to speak, and then everybody splits up into, their own little Matapuls and chiefs, and they'll split up into their own little chiefs and lower, and so everybody will have a funnel. Everybody will get to meet so that everybody knows what their responsibilities are. Okay. After the big funnel, there's going to be a whole lot of smaller funnels, and then smaller funnels and that all the way down to the lowest guy, so that everybody knows what their responsibilities are. That's how funnels work at this time in Tonga. So this is a big funnel. Notwithstanding all this, the lower classes have time on their hands and means enough in their possession to live comfortably. That is to say, they have food sufficient for themselves and their families, plenty of clothing, a house is easily built, and real poverty is not known among them. There you go. Everybody, because of how it's divided. Everybody has a piece of land to grow food, so everybody works. Everybody has animals, so they're raising their own livestock, right? Everybody has their own stuff and their own food. What he's saying is, even houses, you can grab a funnel of guys of your own ranking and lower, and let them know, hey, can you guys help me build my house? Let's build my house. Boom. People help each other out. Because he's saying there is no poverty or homelessness among them. Okay? It's not known among them. And that's for sure, what's real in Tonga. As far as when I was there, that's just how it is over there. Everybody has a part to play in the assistance of everybody else. Everybody has a place. A funnel, although it may regard some affair of public nature, is not always upon a subject where a tax is necessary to be levied, but frequently upon some matter connected with civil policy. For instance, when a piece of ground is laid waste by war, certain persons are appointed to cultivate it, and the chiefs are ordered not to oppress them with taxes or with visits on such plantations before they can supply means. So that would be a big funnel, right? If there was a war and the battlefield of war, that would be a big funnel. Let's all get together and talk about how we're going to do this. Okay, let's go to take the bodies, let's bury them. We'll split this into this. You guys come and grow crops on here. But he's also saying we won't tax you guys as long as you guys are building it. And then eventually, once you guys provide for yourselves, which is pretty much how business works, you give the people who are building business tax breaks, and then once the business flourishes, then they'll tax them. Just like businesses here. It not unfrequently happens that young chiefs molest women who they meet on the road. Then their husbands, if they are married women, make complaints to the older chiefs and Matapuls, and Finau, in consequence, orders a funnel to be addressed to the people in which the impropriety of the conduct of the young chiefs is pointed out. What the hell? So this had been a problem where young chiefs had been molesting women on the roads in Vava'u sometime often, right? And then their husbands complain, and then Finau would have to call a fono for that, and how inappropriate that is. Leave people's wives alone. Leave women alone. Leave girls alone, right? But there's some young chiefs that take that upon themselves. Freaking nasty bastards. The offenders receive a suitable admonition and are ordered to desist from such ill behavior for the future. From one cause or another, there is usually a fono, either general or partial, every 14 or 20 days. So they're meeting every other couple weeks or 3 weeks or so. Address of this kind are absolutely and frequently necessary for the preservation of tolerable decency and good order among a people who have no means of graphic communication. Basically saying, because we don't have writing, because obviously they don't have anything, they don't write yet, because there's no poster. They can't see a poster, hey, no molesting women, leave other people's wives alone. Because you can't write it, they have to meet, and they have to meet often. To maintain good behavior, is what he's saying. So they have fonos often. The speech is generally made by some old Matapul. That's today too, right? The best wisdom, or the wisest men are the older men, and they give out the best wisdom. The reader will recollect that the Matapules hold a rank in society next below chiefs. They are the ministers, as it were, and counselors of chiefs. That's interesting because in government in Tonga right now, there are ministers. There's nobeles, which are the nobles, and then there's ministers on the other side, right, of districts. So it seems like there's chiefs, matapules, and then ministers. It is their duty also to attend to public ceremonies and to keep an eye upon the morals and general conduct of the people. So there you go. That's basically how Tonga runs government now. They're supposed to keep an eye on the morality of people, right? To keep them behaving correctly, is what they're saying. The Matapures and the chiefs. On the present occasion, the ceremony was held at Makave. Where the heck's Makave? Let me see where freaking Makave is at in freaking Makave. Let's see if Makave even is place. Makave. Who's been to this area in Vava'u and knows where Makave Tonga, there it is. On Google Maps right now. Okay, let's see. Oh, yep. Makave is just east of Neyafu. Okay. So they're meeting east of Neyafu. Okay. The ceremony was held at Makave. So this fono is about to be held at Makave, about 2.5 miles from Feretoa, after which, as usual, a large bowl of Cava is provided. See, this is a different Makave then, because Feretoa is far from this Makave, which is 2 miles east of Neyafu. Feretoa is north, near Mataika. This must be a different Makave then. Okay. Unless the properties were divided up and that area takes up all of Makave. I can see that. The chiefs and warriors of Vava'u took a very active part in the preparation of the Cava to demonstrate to Finau their attention and loyalty. Okay, so they're bringing Cava out to this fono that Finau called for everybody in Vava'u to join. The first bowl being drunk, and while all were in expectation that the king would give out some more Cava root to be prepared, on a sudden, he pronounced aloud the word puke, which means hold or arrest. Puke! So while they're faikavaing, after the fono and everything, all the morality talk and all the, the get along talk and everything in this fono, this was a distraction, right? This was Finau distracting all of Vava'u. This is where he takes Vava'u. This is why he becomes the guy of Vava'u that everybody knows today, is because of this incident right here that Mariner's about to tell us, right? Because they have a phono with everybody in Vava'u there, and him speaking and Matapul speaking or whoever's speaking and telling them to be good people. And all of a sudden, and then after that, then they fight Cava. They sit down, everybody's at the fight Cava, and they have the first bowl, and men are expecting, Finau's probably going to pass some more Cava so we can drink some more. Finau yells out, Puke! Instantly, all the chiefs and warriors that had been particularly active against him in the late war were seized by men previously appointed. This is why, Finau is just not, he's not my dude, bro. You would think that after you have Vava'u, that you'd be good, right? But during this Faikava ceremony, he yells out, Puke! And then everybody, all his guys, get all the chiefs and the high generals and everybody who were part of the last war. This is what he's doing. Their hands were tied fast and they were taken down to the beach, where with the club, several were immediately dispatched, right? So some of them were already killing. They were already killed right there on the beach. The remainder being reserved till the afternoon for what is considered a more signal punishment, to be taken out to sea and sunk in old leaky canoes. Okay? See, this is Finau. Some of the lower order chiefs that were against him on the beach right when they got there, got him. And we already heard the stories of the busting the brains out. Finau's ordering that. And he's saving the rest of them for the afternoon. So this is the morning. So the afternoon, he's saving the rest of them to go sink them and drown them out in the ocean. This transaction seemed to show how little was to be trusted to the honor of Finau. No duh. The honor Finau had no honor, seems like. But it must, however, be acknowledged that he had received information of a conspiracy which these chiefs were designing against him, which, if true, his conduct was certainly less reproachable. All right, yeah, I'll give it to him. If he heard conspiracy against him, yeah, okay. Okay, I understand that. That's understandable, which would make this a genius plan. Let me call a fono and then teach peace and morality and God and everything, and then we'll fight Cava, which is always a closing part of the ceremony of anything important that we do, and then I'll just get them then. That's a brilliant plan if that's the case. Although their innocence was never positively asserted, nobody supposed that they had actually entered into any plan of conspiracy, but most persons suspected that they had held discourses upon the subject, and it was generally acknowledged that if a revolt were to take place, these would be the men likely to head it. Such is a summary way of managing matters in the state of society. So this is how society had to be run. If there is a possibility that if I'm Finau Ulukalala and I want to run this, if there's a possibility that any of these guys are going to turn against me and take me out, I'm going to take them out right now. And I'm going to use the excuse that they had a conspiracy against me. I had to take them out. They were going to destroy our peace. They're going to destroy and ruin our life here in Vava'u. But a lot of the people are like, no, they didn't. They didn't have a plan. That's not true, right? And Mariner would he would have said so one way or the other. But he doesn't come out and say there was a conspiracy. He doesn't come out and say there wasn't one, right? But he's just saying, hey, this is what Finau said, and this is what those people said, and this is what it was. So they catch all these chiefs and hold them and tie them up. Some are heads are cracked open on the beach. Apprehensive that this attempt might fail, or that the Vava'u people in consequence might again rise up against him, Finau previously sent a canoe to the Hapai Islands with orders to Tupou To'a that he and his chiefs should hold themselves in readiness to repair to his assistance at a moment's notice. So Finau sent message to Tupotoa, hey, you guys be ready. I'm gonna, do this, and I'm gonna see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna let you guys know so you guys can come help. Tupotoa. There proved, however, to be no necessity for their intervention, the conspiracy succeeding in a degree equal to his expectation. Some difficulty, however, was found in securing Kakahu. Kakahu, who, although highly diseased with scrofula, was a very brave warrior and a Matapul. Scrofula is swelling of the lymph nodes, right? You have lymph nodes here, here. There's lymph nodes. It's filtration. It's a filtration system for the body, just like the liver and the kidneys are filtration systems. Lymph nodes are filtration symptoms. So he had swollen lymph nodes, and it could make you look, ugly, really. A very brave warrior. So he's a very brave. So Kakahu is a very brave warrior who had scrofula. And like most brave warriors, according to the Fiji practice, right? They always compare brave warriors to Fijians because the Fijians were the dudes, right? To the Fiji practice, always upon his guard against treachery. Basically saying the Fijians always got their head on a swivel. So Kakahu was like the Fijians. Not only was he a good warrior, not only was he brave, he did have scrofula, but he was like the Fijians. He was always on point, and he was always ready for war, just in case something happened against treachery. They had therefore recourse to stratagem on this occasion. Mr. Mariner's services were required as the means to which he consented on being informed that the king's intentions were merely to confine him as a prisoner till some part of his conduct were examined into. And had it not been for the part which is this gentleman was appointed to act in the business, 2 or 3 no doubt would have been killed, and several wounded in the attempt. So basically saying, Finau said, Mariner, you come, I'm gonna need you, right? When it comes to Kakahu. And Mariner is saying, if it wasn't for him, John Martin said, if it wasn't for Mariner, guarantee Kakahu would have killed 2 or 3 of these guys on his own. Owing to his diseased appearance, Kakahu was not present at the Cava party after the Fono. Indeed, he was seldom present on any public occasion except to fight. And it was resolved, therefore, that a young warrior, in company with Mr. Mariner and others, should go and present him with Cava at his residence as soon as the above chiefs were seized. So after the Cava party in the Fono, Kakahu wasn't there because he's an ugly guy because of his disease. So Finau sends Mariner over to Kakahu's house with Cava, right? To go sit with him and give him Cava because Cava's an offering of peace. He's sending Mr. Mariner with Cava and warriors. Mr. Mariner was to sit next to him and to ask him for his spear, as if to look at it from curiosity. For this spear was a remarkably good spear, headed with the bones of the tail of the stingray. And he always carried it about with him. So he's got a nice spear, tail of a stingray at the tip, nice spear. Tongan, Kakahu, ready like the Fijians, had a nice spear. The plan is to take the Cava, take the warriors, go sit down with him, sit next to him, ask him for his spear, and then look at it as if you're curious about it. This is what Finau's telling Mariner. Mr. Mariner could take this liberty better than anyone else, for they were pretty well acquainted. This Kakahu and Mariner were friends, basically. They were well acquainted. And being a foreigner, his curiosity appeared more plausible and less subject to suspicion. So because he was a Palangi, this Finau's mentality. There's a great plan. I'll send the Palangi kid to go with Cava, go sit down next to him. They're already friends. And, look at it and compliment his spear, whatever it is, and he'll give you his spear. Because Finau knows he's not going to give anybody else his spear. He's on his toes. His head is on a swivel. He's not going to just give his spear just to anybody. So Finau using this as a strategy to send Mariner over there because he's friends and he's a palangi. Having got it into his hands, he was to throw it away, which was to be the signal for the seizure. So Mariner's supposed to get it and then throw it, and then the warriors were to come and to hold Kakahu down before Kakahu kills anybody. Before Kakahu had time to hear of what was going forward at Makave, the appointed party arrived at his house and presented him with Cava. Mr. Mariner took his seat, was not in many instances voluntary. Mariner did not want to do this. Mariner said, I didn't volunteer. He's my friend. I wasn't going to do this because he's my friend. That's what Mariner is saying. It's like, I didn't do this voluntarily. I did this because Finau's my stepfather, or my father, my adopted father, and he's sending me out to basically betray my own friend. This is the mind of Finau. And having got possession of the spear, he watched his opportunity. In a moment, his enemies were upon him, but he sprang forth from the ground like an eager lion, enraged, and burst from them repeatedly with such prodigious strength that it was with the greatest difficulty they could bind and secure him. So Kakahu was breaking out of him. They tried to hold him down, but he was strong, right? He's a warrior. And he broke away 3 or 4 times, and they finally got him down. They then took the prisoner down to the seacoast and put him on board a canoe to be drowned with the rest in the afternoon. Damn. That's crazy. So this straight warrior gangster, Finau just outsmarted his guys. That's the thing with Finau. That's the main thing. You couldn't trust him, but when it came to military, you got to give it to him. He outsmarted a lot of these guys. And he used everything. He used God, he used religion, he used the priests, he used Matapul, he used the Finau, he used, whatever he could. And now he just used Mariner to get Kakahu. These transactions happened in the morning, after which all the Hapai chiefs and warriors that were with the king appeared under arms, and also a certain Vava'u chief named Paongo, a relation and confidant of Finau. The rest of the Vava'u chiefs in Matapul is remaining unarmed, lest they might excite in Finau suspicion that they meant to take hostile measures. About midday, the large canoe in which were the prisoners, lashed hand and foot, pushed out to sea under the command of Lolohea Malohi, an adopted son of Finau, having also on board 3 small canoes in a very leaky, rotten state, in which the prisoners were destined to be put and allowed gradually to sink, reflecting on their approaching dissolution without having it in their power to help themselves. So at the funnel, nobody was armed. The Vava'u guys weren't armed. The Ha'apai guys were armed at the order of Finau. And the Vava'u guys weren't armed because they didn't want to look like they were going to do anything to earn Finau's trust. But Finau at this funnel already had a plan that he was going to take them no matter what, right? And the guys that he's bringing in the afternoon, Kakahu's one of them. They get this large canoe and they lay 3 small canoes, leaky old canoes on it, and now they all jump onto this giant canoe and they sail out onto the water. And Lolohea Malohi is the one that's leading that, which Finau's adopted son. The distance they had to go was about 2 leagues. 2 leagues is about 7 miles, 3.5 miles a league, about 7 miles out. And the weather being calm, the canoe was obliged to be paddled most of the way. In the meanwhile, some conversation passed between the prisoners, particularly between Naufahu and Pupunu. We got two other chiefs, Naufahu and Pupunu. Naufahu observed to Pupunu that it would have been much better if they had never made a peace with Finau, And to a certain degree, he upbraided Pupunu with not having followed his advice. So Pupunu must be the highest chief over there because Naufal was like, "Na ostalatu." We shouldn't trust Finau. He's telling them. Naufal was telling Pupunu, "No, I already told you, we shouldn't have trusted him with peace." And this is on their ride because their hands and feet are tied. This is on the canoe, on the giant canoe of their riding to go get drowned, right? To this, the latter replied, which is Pupunu, that he did not at all regret the late peace with Finau. For being his relation, he felt himself attached to his interests. And as to his own life, he thought it of no value, since the king did not think his services worth having. Damn. Dang. Pupunu is a great chief for thinking that way, right? Because it seemed like the Vava'u guys thought that way because he's pretty much reiterating Tupo Niwa's sentiments, right? If my life isn't important to my king, then my life just isn't important. That's what Pupunu was saying to Naufahu while they're tied up on the canoe about to go get drowned. That he's saying, nah, I don't regret it. I don't regret calling peace with Finau. Not only is he my relative, so Finau Ulukalala is related to Pupunu. Pupunu trusts him and he's all about the peace. But now, Naufahu's mad. Rightfully so. Naufahu stated that he had a presentiment of his fate that very morning. So he had a presentiment. So he had a vision. For while he was going along the road from Feretoa to Makave, he met a native woman of Hapai. And as he passed, he felt a strong inclination, he knew not from what cause, to kill her. The heck, Naufahu? And this bias of his mind was so powerful that he could not help turning back and effecting his purpose. So while Naufahu was on his way to Makave, to this meeting, right, to this fono, he passes a Hapai woman on the road, right? There's Naufahu telling Pupunu while they're tied up, I passed a Hapai on the road, Hapai lady, and I felt so strongly to kill her. So strong that I turned back around and went over there and killed her. That's crazy. That's crazy that they have these inklings, like they could just satisfy, a strong desire to freaking kill somebody like that. So basically what Naufa is saying is like, I credit my death to that, to me killing that hot pie lady this morning before the funnel. At the same time, he felt a secret presentiment that he was going to die. And this murder that he had committed appeared now to be a piece of vengeance on the Hapai people, weak indeed in itself, yet better than no revenge at all. Oh, so he's saying, yeah, this not only is my karma, but that was my revenge. So they may get me because of that, but I got them because of this, is what he's saying. It's a trade-off. Among other things, Naufahu lamented that his friend Pupunu had not repaired to the Fiji Islands when peace was first made, and by that means have preserved his life. Naufahu said, "No, stop to get to Fiji. We should have went to Fiji already. I told you that. And by now we'd be at peace. We know we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be riding this canoe to our final destination." As to his own safety, he said it was not a matter of much consequence. He only lamented that he was not about to die in an honorable way. This sounds like Tui Halafatai. I think he was in chapter 2, Tui Halafatai, where he got sick in the morning and they were about to go to war, and Finau and them said, all right, yeah, we're going to go over there this afternoon. And Tui Halafatai said, nah, let's go now. I'm feeling too sick. I don't think I'll make it this afternoon. I want to die there in the battle, right? So Naufahu is saying the same thing. The only thing I regret is not dying in battle. Is not dying in war. Pupunu expressed sentiments to the same purpose. So Pupunu's like, yeah, true. I would have rather died that way also. Kakahu now and then joined crazy Kakahu. Crazy Ellie Kakahu jumps in on the conversation while they're on their way to their death. Kakahu now and then joined in the conversation, remarking that he only lamented his death inasmuch as no opportunity had been afforded him of revenging himself. So Kakahu's back there singing, "See, the only thing I'm mad about is that I wasn't able to kill anybody. I wasn't able to die for, same purposes, same thing that Naufal was saying, like, yep, I'm dying right now, but yeah, I killed one of your women earlier, so it's a good trade-off." Kaká was like, "Man, y'all over here, y'all couldn't, I'm over here and I want to freaking tamate somebody." There were 18 prisoners on board. 18? Of whom the greater part, before they arrived at the place where they were to be sunk, begged that the manner of their death might be changed to the more expeditious one of having their brains knocked out. This was granted them, and the work of execution was immediately begun. I can't imagine knocking somebody's brain out, but you know how Mariner described that this ironwood that they use only took one blow, and it is pretty heavy, but it's usually one blow of the ironwood and the head would split open or get smashed. That's why he didn't recognize anybody on the Port-au-Prince when he came up on the deck and he said all the brains were smashed in, all the belongings on the Port-au-Prince. He's saying, yeah, it only takes one. So a lot of them on their way out to get drowned, a lot of them said, you know what, just bash my brains in which that was allowed. But I can't imagine doing that because I've hit with a steel pipe a pig, and I don't know, their heads are probably, way harder than our skulls, but it took everything, both hands, everything, boom, and it knocked them out and pretty much, it started shaking, but it didn't knock his head off. You know what I'm saying? These guys were knocking, and of course, yeah, probably the head's a lot more accessible. It's probably not as hard as a pig head or whatever. And the ironwood, once hit real hard, yeah, knocked the brains out. This was granted them, and the work of execution was immediately begun. Having dispatched 3 in this way, it was proposed, for a sake of convenience, that the remainder who begged to be thus favored should be taken to a neighboring small island to be executed, which being agreed on, they disputed by the way who should kill such a one and who another. Oh, okay. So they killed 3 that way. There's 18 on the big giant canoe. They killed 3 that way, but they're saying, all right, this is inconvenient. It's probably rocking the boat, and you're hitting and killing them and pushing them off or whatever. But then the rest are saying, all right, we're not going to do the rest here. We'll drown the ones that we want to drown, the highest order of chiefs, and then we'll take the rest of you onto land, and we'll do that there. And then they start dividing. Okay, you do him, you do him. You start dividing the responsibility of executing these guys like a regular conversation. Crazy. 9 were dispatched at nearly the same time, and the remaining 6, being chiefs and staunch warriors of superior bravery, scorning to beg any favor of their enemies, were accordingly lashed in 2 rotten canoes, 3 in each, and their destroyers remained at a little distance to see them sink. The bravest ones, the ones that weren't going to beg, the ones that didn't want to give any, it was just, they couldn't. It was an honor thing. It was a pride thing. The ones that weren't going to beg were the highest ones. Pupunu is one of them. Naufahu is one of them. Kakahu is one of them. They're not going to beg for their lives. They're going to die. All they're talking about is what they regret not doing and killing and whoever, right? Those guys, those 6 are going to be put 3 in 2 canoes, and those 2 canoes are they're going to watch them sink down, which means, and what Finau is trying to do is to kill them, their soul. Finau doesn't want to just kill them quickly. He wants to take the soul of a chief, of a warrior, right? His honor. I want him to die before I kill him, basically, is what he's saying, as far as the honor of chiefs and warriors are. That's what he's trying to do, which is cruel. But yeah, I can only see that happening from a treacherous person like Finau. Pupunu, while in this situation, said that he only died unhappy, on account of his infant son, who would be left friendless and unprotected. But calling to a young chief in the larger canoe of the name of Talo, begged for the sake of their gods that he would befriend his child and never see him want either clothes or food suitable to the son of a chief. Pupunu's an honorable guy. Pupunu is an honorable dude. While he was sitting in the canoe tied down, he looked over to the large canoe and while his canoe was sinking and called to this guy Talo, right? Hey Talo, God, for the sake of our gods, take care of my infant son and clothe him and feed him like a chief should be, clothed and fed. Pupunu's a good guy. I know a Pupunu. That guy is. Nah. Anyway, that Pupunu that I know, Leo Pupunu. Anybody who knows Leo Pupunu, yeah, this is his ancestor chief, and he sounds like a very honorable guy. Let's see, Talo. Okay. Upon which Talo made a solemn promise to take the most attentive care of him, and Pupunu seemed quite satisfied. So Pupunu being tied down said, Talo, take care of my son for me, will you? Talo said, yeah, I'll take care of him. And Pupunu said, all right, cool. Cool. That's crazy. Now Fahu lamented the sad disasters of the day, saying how many great and brave men were dying an ignominious death, who not long since had made the whole army of Finau tremble. Oh, right? Now Fahu's insulting Finau, like, yeah, it's terrible that we're all dying today. It's terrible that all the men that made up the warriors, right? This is the warriors in the army that that Finau was scared of, feared, and made him tremble. Iri fear, eh? He lamented, moreover, that he had ever retreated from his enemies and wished that, on such an occasion, he had faced about, however inferior in strength, and sold his life at a high price instead of living a little longer to die a shameful death. Now, Fahu was just telling those guys, while they're sinking and talking to the chiefs and everybody standing there on the large canoe, now Fahu said, I wish I didn't retreat at all. I don't care how weak I am, weaker than I am than any of you. It would be much better if I died there than to die this shameful death. Okay, now Fahu. Shouldn't have admitted it to them. Don't give them the satisfaction. Anyways, he earnestly requested them to remember him in the most affectionate manner to his wife. So now he's asking for a favor. Hey, please tell my wife, give the greatest affections and all that, right? Because remember, they're in Macave. Most of the people were probably, some of the people were probably still in Feretoa with the children. Because Naufau said he past the woman going towards Neyafu while he was on his way to Macave. So not everybody was there. This must have been a funnel for the chiefs. Ah, that makes sense. Because he was telling them not to molest women. Kakahu swore heartily at Finau. So Kakahu's cussing him out. He's cussing Finau out. Kakahu's he's the warrior. He don't give a damn. And all the chiefs of Hapai. So he's cursing and cussing them. The curses used among the Tonga people are very numerous, but for the most part, they are rather horrible commands than curses, and are generally in regard to maltreating or eating one another's superior relations. Okay? So basically, he's not cussing at him. He's telling him to go treat his superior relations a certain way. Or eat them, right? You ever hear, alo kaiho kui, alo kaiho tamai, right? I've heard that before in Tonga, right? But I guess this is the worst of the worst type of insults that you could hurl at somebody in Tonga in those days. For it is considered a crime to eat food which a superior relation has touched. How much more, therefore, to eat that relation himself? Now I've heard that you don't eat the food, your dad's leftovers, or food, or you touch your dad's plate. I've heard that because they say that your hair will turn white or whatever. I've heard that story or that, but it's saying right here that it's illegal, right? It is not, for it is considered a crime to eat food which a superior relation has touched. How much more, therefore, to eat that superior relation? So your relation, your dad, your grandpa, your grandma, whatever, those are your superiors. And that's that was a funny saying for anybody who's been, hey, I don't kaiho koi. Go eat your grandfather or grandmother, right? Those were the worst in Tonga in these days during Mariner's time. For a sample, bake your grandfather till his skin turns to cracknel and gnaw his skull for your share. This is Kakahu sitting in the canoe telling these guys what to do with their, their mothers, their fathers, their probably their sisters, their grandparents. Like, alo ta oho tamai e paku bagi toki kai. That kai hono foi ulu, right? Eat his head, gnaw on his skull. Go and ravish your own sister, bro. Damn, Kakao's crazy. Kakao don't give a damn. Kakao's like, I don't do your own sister, right? Dig up your father by moonlight and make soup of his bones. Damn, that must be terrible because why would it matter if you dig it up during the day and during the night? It's like dig it up by moonlight. Ooh, dig it up by moonlight seems even, a more sacred thing, I guess, because the spirits are there. I don't know why he would say that, but dig them up by moonlight and make his soup for bones. Many of their sayings in this way are too indelicate to mention. So he's saying there's a lot of things that I want to mention that I could say in here, and I know that freaking probably there is worse. I can think of worse, right? But John Martin said, no, I'm not going to put that in here. I guess it's even too much for John Martin to think that it's appropriate at all to even put it in the book. And their fathers okay, so Kakahu swore heartily at Finau and all their chiefs of Hapai and their fathers for begetting them, heaping maledictions upon all their generations. So Kakahu was cursing them, telling them what to do to their superior relations. In this manner, he went on, cursing and swearing at his enemies till the water came up to his mouth. He's doing this the whole time while the ship is sinking. He's just yelling this at those guys while they're watching, and the freaking going down. And he said, Mariner said, and he did it all the way up till it came to his mouth, and he's still cussing at him. And even then, actually raised his head for the opportunity of uttering another curse, spluttering the water. So the water is coming up and you're, you'll see his freaking bubbles and shit. Spluttering the water forth from his lips till it bereft him forever of the power of speech. Damn. This is crazy. They were about 20 minutes. They sunk for 20 minutes. Golly. They were about 20 minutes sinking, after which the large canoe returned to Vava'u. You can say a lot of things in 20 minutes, right? Pupunu had a little bit to say, and then he was cool. He just sat there. Now Fahu said something, and, say something nice about me to my wife. And now Kakahu don't give a damn. Nope. Pupunu and Naufahu were amiable characters. In time of war, they were brave and enterprising. In time of peace, gentle and humane. The conduct of Naufahu in killing the poor Hapai woman seems to make much against his humanity, but as it was so contrary to his general sentiments and conduct, he ought to have the liberality to suppose that it was a sudden frenzy of the mind which, at the moment, he could no more help than a man in convulsions can help the violent agitation of the body. So Mariner's basically saying, I don't know what, Naufahu and Popunu were good men. They were vicious and savage in war, but at the same time, they were peaceful and good-hearted men. So why Naufahu killed that lady on the road to Makave, was unlike him. But I mean, maybe it was just as uncontrollable and instinct as convulsions, as seizures are. That's what Mariner is telling him, giving him a pass basically because he's such a good-natured person. Let this, however, be as it may, it is certain that he and Pupunu were both esteemed for their mild and benevolent disposition and were gaining every day more and more the love of the people, which no doubt caused the king to be jealous of them, lest their increasing power should ultimately annihilate his. There you go. That's the answer. Why did Finau do this? He did this because Naufahu and Pupunu were good people. They were good men. They gained favor and they gained more and more popularity among their own people because it's their people. Those two are Vava'u guys. Finau is a Ha'apai guy. There's no way that they were going to like Finau as much as they love Pupunu and Naufahu already. Those are their chiefs. Naufahu's desire of revenge was, of course, considered in their state of society a virtuous and manly sentiment. If we attend to their conversation at the approach of death, we shall find then both expressing sentiments of disinterested friendship for each other. Pupunu is quite unhappy at leaving his infant son and recommends him strongly to the care of Talo by all that is sacred and religious. Now Fahu desires to be affectionately remembered to his wife. These are not sentiments that belong to gross and savage minds. Yep. All Pupunu wanted was his son to be taken care of. All Naufahu wanted was his wife to remember him, well. And he's saying those aren't savage minds. They could be, or they could be savage at that, when it was time, when it was necessary. As to Kakahu, he certainly was not so much famed for his benevolence as for his prodigious strength and great personal courage, yet still he was much beloved and respected, and several of the Englishmen were much indebted to him, as well as to the other two, for many acts of kindness. He's talking about Kakahu? Strength and courage. Yet, still, he was much beloved and respected, and several of the Englishmen, so some of the Palangis, were indebted to him, as well as the other two. So the Palangis were indebted to all these guys for many acts of kindness. They were nice to the Palangis. Pupunu, Kakahu, and Naufahu were nice to the Palangis. And Mariner is saying, yeah, they all owed them. I mean, they were nice to, those guys were nice to all the Palangis, to all of us. Mr. Mariner heard these particulars from Talo and 2 or 3 others that were in the large canoe and considers it strictly consonant with the truth. So even the Ha'apai guys on their way back after those guys drowned, the Ha'apai guys on their way back to land in Vava'u, even the Ha'apai guys were like, yeah, those are good dudes. And Kakahu were good dudes. So there you go. There's a lot of interesting points as far as Finau is concerned, right? But at the same time, even the chiefs and the warriors of the opposing army were like, yep, we like those guys. The widows of those who were executed on the beach in the morning, and of those who were, so he's talking about the women, the wives, right? Yeah, let's see. Talking about the wives. They're about to probably ask for the bodies so they can go bury their husbands. I'm guessing. Here, let's see. Okay. The widows. Let's talk about the widows of the men that died. The widows of those who were executed on the beach in the morning, and of those who were dispatched at the small island in their way out to sea, petitioned Finau to grant them leave to perform the usual rites of burial in behalf of their deceased husbands, which the king readily acceded to, and they accomplished the ceremony with every mark of unfeigned sorrow and regret. So the ones that were their brains got knocked out, their wives came and asked Finau, "Can we go bury our men?" And Finau said, "Yeah, you guys can go bury your men." And let them. The ones that were brains knocked out, right? When the last affectionate remembrance of Naufahu were made to his widow, she appeared greatly moved. So, not all Naufahu wanted was just say some good things to my wife about me, and they did. And when they did, remembering him, she retired to her house. She was greatly moved, right? She retired to her house and, arming herself with a spear and club, went about to seek for the other widows who had lost their husbands in the same way, and urged them to take up arms as she had done and go forth to revenge their husband's death by destroying the wives of Finau and his principal chiefs. Now Fahu's wife gets brave after hearing this, grabs her spear, and then goes to all these widows of all these men that died and told them, "Everybody, let's go grab a spear. Everybody grab a club, something. Let's go kill their wives." These men, Finau Ulukalala, all his men, all his generals, let's go kill all of their wives. Now Fahu's wife is a G, okay. Finding at length that none of the others were willing to follow her example, she was obliged to give up the design altogether. It was suspected that Finau would have been very angry on hearing her intention, but on the contrary, he praised it much and approved of it as being not only a meritorious act of bravery, but a convincing proof that her affection for her deceased husband was great and genuine. So there you go. None of the other women were down, right? And because they weren't brave, she was like, all right, frig it. But Finau hearing it, Mariner thinking that he was going to be disappointed, Finau's like, no, that's brave. That's down. That's hella down. After this transaction, all the Vava'u chiefs paid remarkable attention to Finau, not failing to send him frequent presents of Cava, Ngatu, etc., for they now found, by woeful experience, that he was not a man to be trifled with, and that his honor was not safely to be trusted to. There you go, Vava'u people. Anybody Vava'u that was wondering. You want to know why you think Finau Ulukalala is a Vava'u guy? This is why right here. This is how he took over Vava'u. He took out true Vava'u chiefs and replaced them with himself and his chiefs from Ha'apai. So really, the chiefs now at this point in time are Finau Ulukalala and his Ha'apai guys, his Ha'apai chiefs, whoever he took with him. Because all the Ha'apai or the Vava'u chiefs are now, for the most part, done out. So now all of Vava'u belongs to Ha'apai, to Finau Ulukalala from this point on. Into the history that everybody's heard, from this point on, Vava'u belongs to Finau Ulukalala. That's why the history speaks that way. The king now spent a considerable portion of his time in country excursions for the purpose of shooting kalai, of which sport a description has already been given. About this time, a canoe was dispatched to the Ha'apai Islands for the purpose of procuring a quantity of fish, several species being there found in much greater abundance than at Vava'u, or at least there is a much opportunity of catching them, owing to the greater number of reefs and shelves. So there's a fish. So after all this is done, Finau and his men go Whanakalai and Ha'apai, or they go Whanakalai and then they go to Ha'apai to search for this fish they can only find, for the most part, on reefs. With this canoe, so they're going to Ha'apai. With this canoe, a certain chief named Mahepuku departed for Ha'apai, where he possessed a large property on which he was desirous to reside for the future. Mahepuku had also a plantation at Vava'u, situated on the northern coast about 1.5 miles long, a half-mile broad, one end of which ran down close to the water's edge. This property he made a present of to the king. Okay. So in northern Vava'u, if anybody knows where this place is, it used to belong to this guy named Mahepuku, and it was a present given to Finau Ulukalala, that property. It's a large property. He's about to give a description of it. It will be proper to give a description of this plantation because it includes near the sea, the most romantic spot in all the Tonga Islands. So is there a place in Vava'u, for anybody that lives there, the most romantic spot in all the Tonga Islands, according to Mariner, which constitutes the subject of many of their songs and is a place of resort to the young and old of both sexes who wish to enjoy for a few hours the luxury of romantic scenery. Vava'u people. Apparently there's a place higher up above the ground in Vava'u on the beach. There's a place in North Vava'u that belonged to this guy Mahepuku. Mahepuku gave that property to Finau Ulukalala. It is famous also for having been, at a former epoch, the scene of an enterprising action on the part of some young chiefs who took refuge there from their adversaries and obstinately held their position for 6 months. Dang, there's a lot of insurrection going on in Tonga back then, huh? Because it says there's a group. We talked about the guy who planned a hit on the Tuitonga, and he was found out. These guys were even earlier than them. Planned something, and they hid in this spot in North Vava'u on this property. It happened that nature has assembled in this spot not only the wildest profusion of the vegetable kingdom, over which the lofty toa tree stands preeminent, but also objects of other descriptions. Okay. So on this spot, on the way up, it's a high place. On the way up, there's plantation there, right? Overhanging rocks. It's a high place. Hollow sounding caverns and steeps, precipices calculated to give an aspect of bold and sublime as the imagination can well conceive, the constituting a species of scenery which, in proportion as it were, it is more rare, is more admired by the natives. Where is this place, bro? To this retired spot, you proceed along a road which runs through the whole length of plantation till you arrive at a thick wood of tamanu. Tamanu, what's a tamanu? I don't never heard of tamanu. And toa trees, toa's oak. Situated on a very steep descent, down which the road becomes a narrow path, winding from side to side and beset on either hand with maile and siale and other shrubs planted by the liberal hand of nature. Okay. In Vava'u, somebody tell me if they know where this place is. At the back of Vava'u, up north, right? There's a place where you walk up and it goes up, the land goes up onto a cliff or something, right? And there's plantations. The plantations are obviously not there anymore. Plantations, ciales, mailes, right? There's a path going up into this area, and it seems like it's a narrow way up with brushes and whatnot. Nature, whose variegated flowers perfume the air with the most delightful aromatic fragrance, while from the lofty branches of the trees, the ear is soothed with the soft and plaintive voice of wood pigeon. I don't know what wood pigeon is, but if you can imagine that, he's describing this place as a romantic spot at the point of the mountain, as it were, for those who like to travel to the point of the mountain up where high places to look over the city and, be in a romantic spot. That's what he's describing. Having proceeded with slow and lingering step along this winding path for about 500 yards, a flat plantation of coconut trees presents itself, through which, at a little distance, a beautiful prospect of the sea suddenly bursts upon the view. So you're walking upwards, and then there's coconuts, and then through the coconut trees, once you get through there, you start seeing the ocean. On each side of the steep and lofty ridge of rocks, in the form of a crescent, extends into the water, forming a sort of bay. Okay, now we're getting a freaking image of this place. All right, let me know if, let's see. Oh, there's a scenic lookout in northern Vava'u. Okay, let's see what, and it's somewhere high. Utula'aina Lookout. There's a high area. Utula'aina Lookout. So far, the description is matching this Utula'aina Lookout because there's a scenic lookout and there's a Esi Osalote Lookout. But I'm pretty sure this place that Mariner is describing right now is on the north side of the island on the beach. It's a beachside property. And it's looking like Utula'aina Lookout, y'all. That's what it's looking like. All right. Yeah. If anybody wants to go on Google Maps and look at Utula'aina, it's looking like that area. The rocks on the left hand are, for the most part, the highest. But at the termination of those, on the right, loftier than the others, extends upwards to a great height, like the turret of some ancient battlement. So it's looking like this, probably because of how whatever made it, or whatever volcano lava or whatever, probably it flowed all the way down to the ocean and formed it that way. Obviously, right? On this rock, but it's high up, there's a cliff. On this rock, in former times, as popular tradition records, a band of young chiefs, the heads of a conspiracy, took refuge from the rage of their adversaries and held that place for 6 months. They had supplied the place beforehand with ma, on which they lived during the whole time. Okay, so this is another story of war. This is another wartime story of a band of young chiefs who try to take over the Tuivava'u. Different time. They stayed here, it being quite inaccessible except by one narrow path, exceedingly steep and dangerous, not wide enough to allow 2 persons to pass abreast. So yeah, it's gotta be Utula'aina Lookout on the Google map in the thing. It's in that area because it's saying once you get up into this area, up top on this hill, only 1 person can pass. I don't know if he meant 1 person can pass as far as the cliffs, because he's saying the cliffs are there and only 1 person can pass up in there, or if the path was just made for 1 person. But maybe there's trees or bushes near that area. The passage was, of course, perfectly under the command of those above, who by rolling large stones down could at any time hurl destruction upon whomever might rashly attempt to ascend. I can see that. Like if they were up there, if we were up there and we had a lot of large boulders, yeah, we would hold it. If you What's going on? Oh. It's kind of like that movie okay. Yes. I might have flat earth there. Oh, man. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So this is another story, right? These young chiefs try to overtake Vava'u. Here they remained in security as long as their stock of provisions lasted, and even when this was expended, they refused to yield till famine and raging thirst had destroyed all but 3. who, being tempted by a promise of pardon, gave themselves up to their adversaries. Scarcely was this done when they were taken before the king, who cruelly ordered them to be massacred in his presence. Yep, there you go. Common practice in Tonga back then. Anyway, we're describing how romantic this place was. That used to be. It seems like everywhere they go has a story. They went into a cave and then a romantic story. They went up onto this place where Mahe uh, Buku, and there's a story about it. Like there's a story for every area that they've been to so far. That's interesting. And then in those stories come the names of those areas or the owners of those areas. Scarcely was this done when they were taken for the king. Okay, so those guys were end up being killed by the king. So those guys got caught. The number of those who died upon the rock were 5, and they were buried on the spot. 3 of the graves are still very apparent. The other 2 are pointed out, but they are not in so distinct a state. There's bodies buried up there, y'all. Anybody who goes up there, anybody in Vava'u who goes up into that area, there's bodies buried up there. Mariner saw that there were 3 bodies that were, graves that you can still tell the graves are still there, and the other 2 were probably washed away. But there's bodies up there in that area on that cliff. The natives now and then ascended to enjoy the sublime beauty of the surrounding scenery, or to reflect on the fate of those rebellious men who, so long ago, departed from the scene of public tumult by dying in an unsuccessful attempt to change the order of things. Damn. There's so many stories are even in here that aren't in here, but they reference a whole lot of stories that are pretty cool stories, but they don't tell the whole story. And none of this is in the history, which is why I love this story, this book. Here, the moral reflections of the natives are sometimes heard in the following strain. Where now are those men who once held up their heads in defiance of their chiefs? Where now are these proud boasts of superiority? Their bodies lie here mingled with the dust, and their names are almost forgotten. Damn. Damn. You know what's crazy is that if they did conquer, their names wouldn't be forgotten, right? If they did conquer, their names would be in songs or would be in stories, or the story would have been different. It seems like, well, obviously that's the phrase, that's the mantra, right? History is written by the victor. So, yeah, I guess that is true. The names of some of these chiefs are still known to a few of the old Matapules who have been at the pains of inquiring particulars from their fathers, but the cause in which they suffered is very imperfectly understood and no doubt mixed up with a great deal of invention and surmise. So they're basically saying, yeah, our fathers and grandfathers know the names of those guys, but a lot of the stories of how they died, because probably the story is just, this story, oral, that's the thing with oral history and oral stories passed down, is that sometimes it sounds like you can punch a hole in the story, right? Like you fact check the story with either just logic or science, and they're just not going to change the story, right? Because that's how we've always kept history. They're not going to change the story, which is a problem in my estimation. Are they now the same ambitious spirits in Pulotu? Pulotu is the afterlife, the spirit world, as they were once in Tonga, when they animated this silent dust, which is now all that remains of them? Are they still the partitions of sedition, tumult, and war? But no, in Pulotu they are all gods, and see with a clear understanding what is right, without the folly of fighting. Interesting, right? Even the way the old men in Tonga spoke, when they're like, no, are they at war? No, no, what, are they brave, whatever they're doing. Said, no, they're all gods now. Now they don't have to fight. It seems like, because you're saying, when you're in the spirit, or when when you're just the spirit, you can sense what's right or wrong. There's no need for war. That's what they're saying. That's what these old Matapulis and Tongas are saying, is that when you're in the spirit, when you're just the spirit, outside of the spirit will sense what's right or wrong, and you won't need to go to war. That's what he's saying. Such are the reflections of those who visit this spot and view the lonesome habitations of the dead. But it is not often that such visits are made owing to the difficulty of the ascent. So I guess nobody really visits that area because they said it's hard to get to up there, right? And another thing with the old Tongans believing that the spirit can sense things is an interesting thing, because I've watched a whole bunch of videos on near-death experience videos, right? And that's another thing they all said. They all said when they left their body, and they can see their body, but when they left their body, they sense everything. They sense purpose. They sense love. There's a lot of love in there, in all these experiences, but they sense everything. They know that there's something familiar about just sensing everything, right? Which means the soul and the spirit can sense. The sixth sense, basically, is what that is. For these old Tongans to believe that like they knew that already, right? In the estimation of the romantic, however, it is amply repaid by the rich and extensive scenery on every side, while the murmurings of the waves breaking upon the rocks below soothes the mind with a pleasing melancholy easier to be conceived than described. He's basically saying, there's no words. I can't describe this. Mariner can't describe it. It's like it's beautiful up there. You can only feel it. Right? The effect which this works upon the minds of the natives will be more easily understood when we see a sample of their descriptive songs, which in language like that of Osane are plaintive and pathetic. In the first place, however, it is necessary to state a few particulars relative to this romantic and diversified spot, that certain passages of the ensuing song may be better understood. So he's about to describe, which he did a pretty good job describing it already, as far as the song is concerned. On the right of the wood of tamano trees, there's another wood consisting almost wholly of toa trees. There the natives frequently resort to rinse themselves with the fresh water found in the hollows between the junctions of the large branches or limbs that come off immediately from the trunk. After having bathed themselves in the sea, for the salt water, without using such rinsing afterwards, is apt to produce in hot climates a cutaneous eruption, besides which the fresh water prevents that uneasy sensation of heat in the skin upon the sun, or in the skin upon a little exertion, extended with the calmness, and sometimes, on the contrary, with the profuse perspiration. Here also the plate flowers which they have gathered at Matauto, about a mile further along the beach, which the women found put around their necks, or take home to the mua, and present to their lovers and their friends, or to superior chiefs. Oh, so women would go to the beach, make leis, basically is what they're making, then take them home to their lovers, friends, or superior chiefs. All right. Then it goes into a song. The description, it just gives a description of a song. The following song is very often sung by them, or to speak perhaps more correctly, is given in a sort of recitative by either sex, and in the Tonga language has either rhymes nor regular measures, although some of the songs have both. It is perhaps a curious circumstance that love and war seldom from the substance of their poetical compositions, but mostly scenery and moral reflections. So he's basically saying the songs that they make you feel. The beautiful plantation of which the above song is partly descriptive is famed for the great fertility of its fields. The breadfruit and coconut trees grow there in abundance. The soil is also highly favored for the cultivation of yams, which there are larger than in most other places. And Vava'u has always been complimented for that. Vava'u has great ground, very fertile ground, very great dirt. Everything that grows there grows big and it grows well. And even Mariner's Time is saying the Cava is the best here. The yams are the best here. Everything that grows in Vava'u grows the best here, which is very interesting because we still believe that today for a lot of things, right? Especially the Cava. The water which terminates it at one end is noted for the vast abundance of peculiar fish that resort to the shores of Va'u about the month of July. This fish, which they called Ulukau, is about the size of the common sprat and of much the same shape and hue. The common people consider it a great delicacy, but there is considerable danger in eating it promiscuously, for here and there is found one which produces the most alarming and sometimes the most fatal effects. As there is no mark by which these poisonous ones may be known, it is dangerous to eat of them unless they be procured in the rocky bay of this plantation, where it is said are never found any poisonous. What fish is that? Ulukau. Looks like the common sprat, but it's poisonous. I don't know what that freaking thing is. Let me see. A sprat fish? It looks like a sprat fish. Let's see. Oh. Looks like a sardine is what it looks like. Oh, okay. They're like little fish. They're tiny ones. But I guess there's some that are poisonous. The chiefs, however, seldom touch them, unless perhaps there is a scarcity of other fish. So the chiefs will only eat them if there's not much of other fish. The time when they are best and in the greatest plenty is in the latter end of the month of July, when the natives flock here for the purpose of catching them. And after having procured a quantity, they take them home to their families in baskets made of plaited leaves of the coconut tree. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard of that fish. The symptoms produced by eating this fish when poisonous are headache, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, with violent pains in the bowels to which death generally succeeds in the course of 4 or 5 hours. The only remedy they use, which very seldom succeeds, is to cause the patient drink abundantly of water, or what is considered still better, the milk of young coconuts. Interesting. So there's this area, plantation, where those fish show up, either probably because it's high tide or whatever, but they show up on this plantation, and those are the ones that they eat. Mahepuku, the chief to whom this valuable piece of ground belonged, having made a present of it to the king and Mr. Mariner, now that the war was ended, having nothing to employ himself in, he begged Finau to give it up to him, that he might amuse himself by seeing it properly cultivated. To this the king, after a little hesitation, consented, and Mr. Mariner requested the farther favor, that he might be exempt from all taxes, that no chief might despoil his plantation under pretext of levying any species of contribution, and this exemption, he observed, would be no more than that was consistent with the Tonga custom, which exacts no contribution from foreigners, unless indeed it be upon some sacred occasion as a ceremony of inasi, etc. So Mariner is saying, all right, I know Mahepuku gave this property to you. I love this property. The cliff is up there, the plantation, there's all descriptions, the fish in the July, all descriptions, a great property and plantation, very fertile, whatnot. Now that the war's over, Mariner asks Finau for it. Let me have this property. And Finau says, with hesitation, Finau's like, all right, fine, you can have it. Mariner goes further and says, and you can't tax it. Nobody can tax. You can't tax my property. I don't want to give anything to anybody. I don't want to be taxed, right? But I will give for the inasi. There's once in a while, the inasi is what I'll give up. And Finau tells him, okay, fine. To this also the king gave his assent upon mutual agreement that the whole plantation was to be considered at Finau's service, at being the father and protector of Mr. Mariner, but that he would not take anything nor to trespass upon it in any way without Mr. Mariner's consent, who was to regulate everything regarding it just as he pleased, and was henceforth to consider it as his property with all the persons who worked on it, consisting of 13 men and 8 women. To these the king gave orders that they should pay the same attention and respect to Mr. Mariner as to himself or their former chief. He moreover informed the Matua, or overseer, that he had invested Mr. Mariner with full power to dispatch any of them with the club that failed their duty or neglected in any respect to show proper attention to their new master. So basically, Finau is saying, all right, not only will I give you this property, I'm going to give you the workers that were working here, right? 13 men and 8 women. They work for you now, right? And they tells Mariner, you can kill any of these if you want. If you need to dispatch them and they got to go, you can go ahead and do that. And so that they're now servants of Mr. Mariner, William Mariner. To this, in the usual form, they all returned thanks to the king for the new chief he had been pleased to appoint over them, and expressed their hopes that they should never deserve punishment by anyone of respect towards the stranger chief. So everybody over there is like, "Si malo, malo e mai Matapul vo." They're basically thanking Finau, is like, thanks for giving us a new boss. And as soon as Mr. Mariner entered upon his new possessions, he gave orders to get ready a large bale of ngatu, which he sent to Finau as a present. So Mr. Mariner gave him a gift of ngatu. That must have been, we do that, right? You do that now as, it's luxury, right? We do that for koloa, right? It's treasure now to have ngatu, to pass that around in funerals and pass it around in weddings and wherever else. But it seems to be something that they always give back and forth to each other. Which basically back then, it's like, they're giving them new material of clothing, just in case your clothing wears out. And clothes wear out. So when your ngatu wears out, here, I give you a whole barrel full, or whatever you said, a bale. About this time, Mr. Mariner was nearly devoured by a shark. What the heck? One of his servants who worked upon this plantation had laid pots about 4 feet deep in the water for the purpose of catching crayfish, and Mr. Mariner one afternoon dived down to examine them in hopes that he should be able to fulfill a promise he had made to Tupo Molakepa, the prince's favorite wife, whose situation required a few indulgences, to bring her some of this sort of fish. I wonder what that type of name is, Tupo Molakepa, because, it's something I know of Popunu. His name is Mafi Molasike, not Lakepa. Okay, never mind. Interesting. Anyway, there's a wife of the prince. So it's supposed to be Moingango. His wife loves these type of fish, and Mr. Mariner went down to go, or Mariner went to go look at the pots in the water to see if there's any in there. The spot was just upon the perpendicular declivity of a shelf of rocks. Having come up to take a breath, with the intention of going down a second time, he saw the dorsal fin of a shark gliding swiftly along the surface of the water directly towards him. He instantly clambered upon the reef and sprung on one side. So if you've ever been to the water, he went down to go check those pots and came back up and had the intention to go back down and saw a shark coming towards him. So he turned over, went, and if you've ever been in a hurry to get out of the water, you get out and you roll. You roll yourself away. It says on one side. In a moment after, the deadly enemy, coming with impetuosity, rushed upon the shelf in a foot and a half of water within a yard of him and had some difficulty to get off again. Oh, damn. The shark jumped onto the land, and wiggled its way back into the water. Almost ate that freaking fool mariner, huh? As soon as he had recovered from his consternation, he quickly got off the reef, making very strong resolutions to avoid the future a personal search after crayfish, crayfish in such situations. So from here on out, he went to go check, almost got eaten by a shark, and said, "Okay, you know, I'm not gonna check. I don't care about the crayfish anymore. Now that I almost got friggin' eaten by Jaws." About a month after this, a canoe came from one of the neighboring small islands, bringing intelligence that a large dead spermaceti whale, sperm whale, they call it spermaceti. I guess that's what the sperm whale is, had drifted on a reef off of Vau. Immediately, all the chiefs ordered their canoes to be launched that they might witness this unusual sight. So they got a beached whale on one of the islands near, and now they're going to go check it out. And Mr. Mariner went along with them. They found the whale in a very bad state, half decayed, and sending forth a disagreeable odor, I can imagine. This, however, they did not much regard, for although some of the lower orders managed to make a meal of it, their chief object was the teeth, of which they make a kind of necklace by cutting it into smaller pieces, each preserving the shape of a whale's tooth from an inch to 4 inches long, having a hole in the broadest part. Through this hole, they are closely strung and put around the neck, the largest being in front and the others decreasing in size on each side up to the back of the neck, so that when drawn close, their pointed ornaments upon their brown skin, which is much prized by them on account of its scarcity as well as beauty. So you'll see necklaces that look like that on dancers, right? When you see Polynesian dancers, the men, there's some necklaces that look like, though it's white. They're white, or they're at least ivory. They hang. The biggest part hangs right here, and it goes all the way around. And I think nowadays they're all the same length. But that's what I picture. As far as whale teeth is the biggest one in the middle, and then it gets smaller, smaller as it goes out. Interesting. Yeah. So there's dance necklaces that look just like that, 2 or 3 inches. This has given rise to the accounts which voyagers have given that they wear teeth round their necks, whereas they are only forms of teeth cut out of the tooth of the whale. And it is astonishing with what neatness they do this, making as little waste as it would be possible to do with much better instruments than what they possess. Nothing indeed but a common shaped European chisel or a piece of saw, or in defect of these, a flattened nail rendered sharp. Before they procured iron from European ships, they made use of sharp stones. Okay. Now I know that's definitely what they're mimicking. The dance necklaces, the white ones, the Polynesian dance necklaces, where the big piece right here and then the other pieces go all the way around. It's imitating the teeth of whales. This kind of ivory they also use to inlay their clubs with, as well as their wooden pillows. The high price set upon these ornaments will be exemplified in the following account, which Finau on this occasion gave to Mr. Mariner. Okay. And I've seen some of these, right? I've seen Fijian weapons with white tips on it that look like shells. But Mariner is saying that they also use teeth and put it at the end of their clubs, sticking out of their clubs. And I think I've seen some Maori weapons made that way. Fijians for sure. But Mariner is saying, yeah, a lot of the whale's teeth they put on the end of their clubs. And now Finau is about to tell Mariner how important whale teeth is to them and their people, right? A short time after the revolt at Tonga, when Finau first became sovereign of Hawaii, there it is. Ugh. And Vava'u, news was brought him of a large dead whale being drifted on a reef off a small island inhabited only by one man and his wife, who had the cultivation of a small plantation there. Finau immediately sailed for the place, and finding the teeth taking from the whale, questioned the man about him, who thereupon went to his house and taking down a basket from the roof presented it to him, but in it were only 2 teeth. The man protested that he put them all in there and knew nothing more about them, and taxing his wife with having concealed them, she acknowledged that she had secreted one and brought it to him from a place in which no others were found. But this she assured him was all she had taken. The man defended his innocence on the plea, and the teeth would be of no use to him, for being poor, he could not sell them for anything else, since every chief who could afford to give their value would question his right to them and take them from him. And for the same reason, he could not wear them. So this guy that Finau hears, when he first takes over, the islands in Hawaii, he hears that there's somebody on another island, and on that island it's just one couple. There was a beached whale on there, and Finau figures, okay, I'm gonna go check this out. So he's telling this to Mariner right now. Finau was not satisfied with the plea. The guy says, oh, no, it was just these 2. I put the rest in this basket. I don't know where the rest are. And the wife saying, well, I had 1. That's all I had. So now Finau has 3 teeth, and Finau's getting suspicious. All right, the whale's here on your guys' beach. You guys are the only 2 here. The guy is saying, the man that lives there is saying, well, no, I had teeth, but any chief that came over here, if they ever saw it, they took it because I knew that I wasn't high enough to have possession of them, right? So I wasn't going to wear them as a necklace or sell them at all, because I wasn't allowed to have them because I'm not a high chief. This being done, he again threatened the woman. Finau was not satisfied with this plea, and the man still protesting his innocence, Finau ordered him to be immediately dispatched with a club. So Finau has his brains knocked out because he doesn't believe him. He doesn't believe the guy doesn't know where the whale teeth are. This being done, he again threatened the woman. Finau, come on now. Threatened the woman, and she as strongly protested her innocence. But when the club, which had just ended the life of her husband, was raised over her own head, she acknowledged that she had concealed another tooth and accordingly brought it from a different place. This lady. So she knew where another tooth was, but she wasn't going to bust it out even when Finau was threatening to kill her husband. And being unable or unwilling to produce anymore, she shared the same fate. Damn. So because that's all the teeth they had, and Finau thought they were lying, Finau said, all right, whack them. If Finau's conduct here seems cruel, we are to place a great deal to the account of the state of society which he lived. And at the same time, we must consider that robbery is punished with death in other countries, as well as in Tonga. Oh, there you go. There you go. That's the justification John Martin gives us. He said, "Well, I mean, if you think that that's cruel, remember that robbery is punishable by death. Probably isn't now, but back then it was. Both the man and the woman, in all probability, were guilty. The woman certainly was, and yet she could bear to see her husband sacrificed before her face rather than confess all she knew of the matter and entreated mercy for him, at least, if not for herself. The remainder of these teeth were discovered long afterwards by the particular intervention, as the natives will have it, of the gods. A few years had elapsed when, there being occasion to build and consecrate the house to some god on the island of Lifuka, it was taken into consideration what valuable articles should be deposited beneath its foundation according to the custom on such occasions. So they're building a house, and under the foundation, they're going to put something sacred under there to protect it, basically, I think is what they're doing. They were about to get ready a large bale of ngatu for this purpose when the inspired priest of the god declared it to be wish of the divinity to have some whale's teeth. All right. This priest is saying, no, don't put a piece of ngatu there. Put whale's teeth on it to make it sacred. It's for the god, right? This house is for God. It's in Nifuka. And that there were several buried together on the small island just spoken of in such a particular spot, which place being referred to and dug up, the teeth were found in a perfect state. What? It seemed like this chief that's doing this, that's creating this discovery, if it were, as far as making it sound like he received a revelation, it seemed like he put the teeth there, right? Because he sent them, he said, all right, there's teeth on this island, the island that this whale was on. Go over there to that island, go, and there's a spot right here. There's buried right there. There's a whole bunch of whale teeth there. Bring it to me. This discovery was most firmly and most piously believed to have been made by the sacred interposition of the god himself, who inspired his favorite priest with the requisite knowledge to make it. Okay. This is those type of legend stories where the gods told this guy to go do this, and then something happened, and then a story came out of it, and then became a legend eventually. In the Fiji Islands, whale's teeth are held, if possible, in still greater estimation, for it would be dangerous there for a man unless he be a great chief, and even then, if he were a foreigner, to be known to have a whale's tooth about him. The personal possession of such valuable property would endanger his life. So even the Fijians wouldn't dare have or possess a whale's tooth, because it seems like it's that rare that people are killing each other for it. So you better not be known of having it, right? Because it's not like it's a common thing to have, just like gold, right? People do that for money. Seems like this is a rare commodity, just like gold or money. About this time, the Hope, it's a ship, the Hope, Captain Chase of New York, arrived off the northwest coast of Oahu. When Mr. Mariner heard the agreeable intelligence, he was with Finau at the small island of Ofu on the eastern coast, and he immediately asked the king leave to go on board, who very readily and very kindly gave his permission. So mariners heard that there's a ship over there in Ofu, and it's called the Hope. It's a ship, and this is his opportunity to go back home right now. Mariner wants to go home. This is his opportunity. Several Matapules were with him, one of whom whispered something, because he said, Finau, let me go. Can I go catch that ship? Can I go? Are you going to give me leave? There's a ship over there that I can get on and go back to my country. And the Matap or Finau said, yeah, sure. You can go catch that boat. Several of the Matapules were with him, one of them whom whispered something to the king, which Mr. Mariner, imagining to be prejudiced to himself, endeavored to distract Finau's attention by repeatedly thanking him for his liberal conduct towards him and expressing the grateful sense he entertained of his long continued friendship and protection, assuring him that he had no other wish to leave the islands but what was prompted by the natural desire of returning to his native country and the bosom of his friends. So Mariner is saying, you know what, thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. And there's a Matapul whispering into Finau's ear, right? Probably trying to get him to stay. Like, don't let him go. You can't let him go. He freaking killed all the men that he was with. And Mariner was distracting him by saying, Malo Pito, thank you for this opportunity to stay with you and build a friendship and all of that. And I'm only going because I want to go back to see my friends and family. Understandable. In the same time, he very distinctly heard the king say to the Matapule, but why should I keep him? Right? So the Matapule was telling him to keep him. And shortly after, his order to a fisherman to get ready instantly a certain canoe. So Finau's like, why are we forcing him to stay? The Matapul is forcing. Then Finau, after that, turns to one of the guys on the fishermen to go get ready a canoe for Mariner, for Toki. Vaka Toki Alu. Go back home. Right on. So Finau is feeling him. She's feeling how badly Mariner wants to go home at this time. So he turned the fisherman to get ready instantly a certain canoe and paddle Mr. Mariner on board. Removed from his mind a load of anxiety. So Mariner was like, oh, cool, Finau's gonna let me go. Even though this Matapule, whoever he is, wants me to stay. He again and again thanked his benefactor and taking an affectionate leave of him, got into the canoe and pushed off from the beach. Oh, snap, he's excited. Finally gets to freaking leave Tonga. He's excited. They leave, get on the canoe, they leave, and he finally getting to go back home. There were 3 men to paddle who, after 4 or 5 hours hard pulling, came up alongside the vessel. He saw upon the deck Jeremiah Higgins, John Parrish, and Hugh Williams. There's 3 guys, Palangi guys of his homies that are now on the boat. He can look, they're paddling, and he sees those 3 on there, right? So they got to Vava'u when they picked 3 dudes up, his friends that were there with him the whole time, from the Port-au-Prince. All these guys are from the Port-au-Prince. He hailed the ship when someone looked over the quarter and said, "We can't take you, young man. We have more hands than we know what to do with." Damn. You can only imagine what he's thinking, feeling now, huh? Mr. Mariner could hardly believe the evidence of his senses not take him when he saw 3 of his companions already on board. He began to expostulate. "It is no use your saying anything. We can't take you," replied the other. So Mariner's trying to, "Hey, come on, get me, I want to go." That's hella understandable, because now his friends are gone. He then offered to procure whatever provisions the ship might want, but the unfeeling miscreant turned his back and gave no answer. Damn. So Mariner pleading and begging to get on this ship because now his 3 friends are on there, and saying, "I'll go grab stuff if there's more hands to do it. I'll go grab stuff, provisions and food and whatnot, and just say take me." And the dude just turned around, right? So you can imagine a guy who's been in Tonga, been all through the experiences that Mariner has been through already, dying to go home and see his parents and his friends. Not only that, but now 3 of his friends that were with him in Palangi guys in Vava'u are now on that ship and he can't go. Thus, in 1 minute, from the elevation of hope, his soul sank into despair. What to say, what to do, he knew not. Besides suffering the acute pain of disappointment, he found himself in a very awkward dilemma. If the natives knew that the captain had refused to take him, it would hurt his reputation greatly in their esteem, as they would look upon him to be a low-born tu'a without friends or consideration in his own country. Okay, so he's so used to the way that the Tonga does it that your word basically tells you what part of society you're on, right? So these guys in the canoe that paddled him there, they don't know what the conversation's going on between him and the guys up on the ship. Take me, I'll go get provisions. And these guys are just looking at the ship. They don't speak English. But at the same time, if they knew that the Palangi guys rejected his plea to come on board, they're gonna know that he is a low person in society from where he's from, right? A tu'a. During this time, the men in the canoe were too much occupied in viewing the appearance of the ship to pay much attention to him. Having at length a little recovered himself by resisting the disagreeable ideas that were crowding in upon his mind, he endeavored to assume a cheerful countenance. All right, so now he's pretending like he's happy. He's pretending, oh snap, they got moted. I got moted, right? They don't know. They don't know that he just got rejected, right? But even though he's dying inside, he can't go home. His friends are leaving. He can't go home. He's dying inside. He's saying, he puts on a happy countenance. Put on a happy smile. And informed the men that unfortunately the ship was bound to a country as far from his as his was from Tonga. Okay, so this was in English, so he's lying to them, right? He told the guys that rowed him, oh, I'm not going to go my mouth now feito now do off your mouth feito, right? So he basically is telling them, yeah, I just told them to go because they live far from me. And although the captain wished him to come on board, he had determined to remain at Vava'u until some British ship would arrive. So he's telling the guys, oh, snap. Mariner has full control, like he has control, right? Because he's not, shoot, I'd be dying. I would have jumped up. Yeah, I would have found some way on that ship. But that's an interesting dilemma. That's interesting that he would do that. But he also knows that if he doesn't tell them that, he's going to get moted, right? They're going to clown on him. With feelings that almost choked his utterance, he now ordered them to return to Ofu. Everybody wondered to see him return. So everybody was tripping like, why is he back? What's going on? His story, however, was readily believed, but it seemed strange that he had brought them no presents from on board. This is the common thing where American ships, British ships get there, they trade stuff and they give stuff, and then you give it and gifts, and stuff from these ships to everybody. But this time, Mariner doesn't have any gifts to give anybody. So now looks like now they're going to start making fun of him. What a number of axes he has got for us, said one ironically. And what a heap of looking glasses, said another. Beads will now become quite common, said a third. For Toki is going to give necklaces to all the girls in Vava'u. They're teasing him. This is killing him, and they're teasing him about it. Right? You can only imagine how much he's dying inside right now, especially now. These jokes were exceedingly mortifying, and nothing could be worse timed, right? And that's the thing about, and he already knew this. That's why he kept a happy countenance, because he knew this was gonna happen. I know these people, they're gonna clown on me because I got moted. They're gonna say something about this whole situation, and here you go. They're clowning. He endeavored to laugh at their humor, right? He's kataloi. And by way of apology for his neglect, he told them that he was so disappointed at not finding the ship bound for his own country that he had forgotten to ask for some presents. And besides, that he knew she had very few of those things on board, as she came from a country where they were scarce. So he's basically saying, you know what? I was so focused on the ship going to a far country because I really wanted a ship that's going close to mine. But the country that it's going to, like, they don't have anything. They don't all the stuff that you want. They don't have. They're poor, basically, right? He's clowning on the American ship now. Like, they're poor. They're broke. They don't have anything. So yeah, you wouldn't have wanted anything from that ship. He's doing everything he can to protect himself, his feelings, which is crazy. It's a common thing, but it's crazy, right? Because and this is the control you're expected to have of discipline when you're hurt. We can understand how hurt he is, right? We can understand how he's dying inside. He gets back, and instead of showing his disappointment, he has a happy countenance. People are clowning on him. He can't go see his family. So he absolutely understands at a young age what it is to control your emotions. I mean, picture yourself in one of those, right? For the most part, you can tell by looking at somebody's facial expression, their countenance, right? That they're hurt, right? But he changes it up because he knows that these savages are going to make fun of me. Finau endeavors to console him for his disappointment, assuring him in the kindest manner that he should go by the next ship bound to his own country. So Finau feels for him. Finau is like, hey, who my powerful vaca, right? Because Finau feels for him. He's been far away from his land, from his country, from his family, from his friends. That even though everybody's making fun of him, Finau himself is consoling him. Which, whatever. It's probably not even going to help. Another month now elapsed without any important circumstance occurring when there arrived from the Fiji Islands 4 canoes bringing a Tonga Matapul named Kaumoala and his retinue, who had been almost absent from Tonga many years. But a narrative of this person's adventures in foreign islands will best form a chapter of itself. Kaumoala. So this chapter 10 will be on Kaumoala, and we'll get to that. As far as the things in this chapter that's trippy is more of the personality of Finau Ulukalala, man. These are detailed accounts. They're detailed behaviors, right? These are detailed about Finau, and how cunning he was, and how treacherous he was, and how a lot of people with no stories, right? Which is, of course, that's how it's gonna be. And also a Palangi boy experiencing, or an English boy, Palangi, experiencing this firsthand at a very young age. And he doesn't seem to ever show that he is on Finau's side for a lot of this, right? Because he's still young. And he's never always voluntary, because he said he liked the good guys. He likes Moingangongo because he's a good guy. He liked Tupo Niwa, whom Tupo Toa killed, thinking that maybe Finau had something to do with it also. He was a good guy. He liked Pupunu. Kakahu was his friend, Naufahu, right? So at the very least, we know that Mariner is put in a difficult position to tell the story of Finau and be and behave under the instruction of Finau, but still have, a Christian upbringing and an education necessary to make the right choices as far as distinguishing what's right or wrong. Because if you read through the do the entire thing, or if you follow the entire thing, you'd realize that no, it's Finau Ulukalala that's doing all this this crazy savage stuff on his own. Mariner wasn't a part of that, you know. So, wow. There was so much in that chapter. So many stories, so many people. So there it is. That is the account of chapter 9. And I wanted to do that live just in case. And while I edit chapter 7 and chapter 8, now I'll have something to edit chapter 9 off of. But those who want to follow and watch the live, go ahead. And then I'll send out the other. Toza Vava'u, my homeland. Holonga Vava'u, SEO Salote, yeah. Flat Earther, nope. We from Hawaii. I was born there. Mangere. We are very disappointed with the president. Hello from London. Bears eat beets. Bears beets. Oh, snap. Oh, snap. What else? Yep, my lokes. Any other questions of any kind? Let me know. Yeah. Hungry. Anyways. Vava'u. I gotta visit Vava'u, and I would visit Vava'u specifically for these things. I want to go see Ha'apai because of where the monument, there's a monument there where the Port-au-Prince was sunk. I do want to see Foa. I do want to see the areas that Finau and Tuponiwa are from. And there's so much description of Vava'u, like, right? And I'm sure they probably don't think of it, the same way, where my sentiments about this book and the history is more of, nobody knows where some of these things are in Vava'u when I tell them. But nevertheless, that's chapter 9, y'all. I'll be back tomorrow to do chapter 10, and I'll keep working on the editing for the edited versions for those who like the edited versions. Okay. Malo from Hawaii. Malo. Thank you, Johnny Cookie. Yep, thank you guys. I'm doing this documentation just to document it for now and then work from there. Okay. Ofat Kamodolu. Love you guys. Thanks for watching.